Chapter 123 Ancestors' Land? Chapter 123 Ancestors' Land? After receiving the message that Jianwu Shuang had passed away, both the senior leaders of Dragon Palace and his friends were furious. In a room of the manor where Jianwu Shuang lived in. Bang! Wang Yuan pounded a table and the burst of his spiritual power immediately shattered the table. At the same time, waves of air rapidly swept through the surroundings. Third brother. How could he have died? Wang Yuan's fat body was trembling slightly. With rage in his eyes, his seemingly funny face had already become hideous. Danjiu! Wang Yuan shouted suddenly. Whoosh! A purple figure appeared in the room and stood in front of Wang Yuan respectfully. It was obvious that this man in purple didn't come from Dragon Palace. However, he had been staying in Dragon Palace this whole time and the experts of Dragon Palace had no idea about it. Young master. The purple figure Danjiu called. I want to make the top assassin organization of Qianzong Dynasty, Blood Feather Tower, disappear completely. Are there any problems with that? Wang Yuan looked at Danjiu coldly. Blood Feather Tower? Danjiu frowned slightly. Young master, Qianzong Dynasty is beyond our control. I don't care about this. I only want to know, can you do it or not? Wang Yuan shouted in a deep voice. Yes. Danjiu nodded decisively. Then do what I say. Wang Yuan shouted angrily again. Yes. Danjiu left immediately. Blood Feather Tower? My third brother. Wang Yuan clasped his hands, but in the next moment he became quiet. In the cellar of a Golden Dragon subsidiary palace in Tianan province. Third brother died? He jumped into the abyss because Blood Feather Tower was chasing him? Wearing a blood-red robe and carrying a blood-red saber, Yang Zixuan got so angry after receiving the news that his killing intent immediately burst out and soared to the sky. Give me all the information you have on Blood Feather Tower, Yang Zixuan shouted. Yes. The person in charge of this Golden Dragon subsidiary palace took the order immediately. Blood Feather Tower, there was a tremendous cold light in his eyes. From now on, there is only one goal for my enhancement. To kill all the assassins in Blood Feather Tower. In a secret chamber. The black-robed girl, Su Ro, looked coldly towards a golden paper that was in her hand. The paper was being burned using spiritual power. After the paper was completely burnt, an obscure figure appeared in front of Su Ro. Master. Su Ro's voice was small and odd. Little Ro, what happened? The obscure figure said gently. Master, one of my elder brothers died. Su Ro said. Oh, tell me about it? The obscure figure asked. Su Ro did not waste time briefly telling him what happened. After she finished speaking. So you want to take revenge for him, right? Asked the obscure figure. Yes. Su Ro nodded slightly. You used to be gentle, but now you are surrounded by killing intent. It's apparent that you valued your brother a lot in your heart. The obscure figure smiled and said, I'll let a group of guards come and listen to you. From now on they will stay with you to protect you. I appreciate it a lot. Su Ro said gratefully. The obscure figure smiled and then became a cloud of smoke and disappeared. The revenge of Dragon Palace against Blood Feather Tower began quickly and swiftly, leaving no breathing space. While Blood Feather Tower was frantically fending off the attacks of Dragon Palace, they discovered that there were two more terrifying forces besides Dragon Palace, who also launched offensives against them. For a time, the top assassin organization of Qianzong Dynasty, Blood Feather Tower, was teetering on the edge. And all of this resulted from one person, Jianwu Shuang. The entire Qianzong Dynasty was shaken by Jianwu Shuang. However, at the same time, at the bottom edge of the abyss, a platform, completely paved with bluestone floors, was surrounded by a few clusters of flames. Jianwu Shuang was lying on this platform. Though all his internal organs were damaged and there were some fractures in his bones, he still had a trace of life. His consciousness had long been in a blur, and in this ambiguity, he vaguely heard the voices near him. Initial Gold Core Realm. With such a realm, he dared to enter the ancestors' land? It was clearly a female's voice. Big sister, don't you realize that this little guy's appearance is very similar to the one who came here a few years ago? Another voice sounded, but it was a man's hoarse voice. You meant Jian Nantian? When entering here, Jian Nantian had already reached the peak of the exceptional Gold Core realm and possessed an amazing sense of sword essence. He also passed the first test directly, which was much better than this guy. This little guy is not even qualified for the first of the 3 tests of the Ancestors' Land. If it was not for the completely awakened sword soul in him, I really want to throw him out now and let him fend for himself. The woman said. Then what do you want to do now? The man asked. Serve him with a heart-recovering pill and then take him to the sword tomb. Shut him in there for 2 years. Alive or dead. It rests on himself. The woman said. Yes, said the man. Later, Jianghu was aware that someone came to him and picked him up. With this pressure and the colliding of his bones, a sudden surge of pain caused him to fall into a coma completely. It had already been 3 days since Jianghu regained consciousness. In a deserted and vast open space, Jianghu casually lay on the ground. He opened his eyes slowly, but the void he saw was a dark one without any light. He slowly lifted his fingers, then he pinched hard on his own cheeks. Immediately there was a burning pain in his cheeks. The pain is real. It seems that I am not dead yet. Jianghu smiled brightly. He knew it. The abyss was a death trap for others but not necessarily for him. When he completed his enhancement in the endless mountain range, he sensed a peculiar summons and came to the abyss. At that time he was curious about the abyss, and he even guessed that the abyss was the Ancestors' Land that his aunt had mentioned before. The dialogue between the 2 people that he heard during his confusion had proven it. Underneath the abyss was indeed the Ancestors' Land. The Ancestors' Land would exclude all outsiders, but it would not exclude him because he had already awakened the sword soul and owned the triple kill sword. Well, weird my body. Jianghu moved his body slightly but he felt strange. He had exerted all his power into operating the soul-devouring secret skill, and he knew its side effect. Not to mention that this time he used it while seriously injured. It would do more harm to him and it should take him 10 to 15 days to recover. But now, the injuries he suffered had almost recovered during his 3 days in a coma. Chapter 124, The Sword Tomb. Chapter 124, The Sword Tomb. Is it the effect of that heart-recovering pill? Jianghu thought to himself. He also heard in the vague conversation that the woman said to make him take a heart-recovering pill. After figuring everything out, Jianghu forcefully bore the remaining pain and stood up, examining his surroundings. What's this? After seeing the surroundings, Jianghu was stunned. There were some dilapidated stone tablets standing in a boundless wasteland. But, at a glance, numerous thickly dotted sword scars could be seen on the ground. Yes, they were sword scars. They were deliberately left by experts in sword principle. Thickly dotted, thousands of sword scars. Jianghu randomly looked at the sword scar beside him. But with this glance he was attracted by it immediately. It was incomparably violent and swift, containing a strong sword essence of raging fire, which made Jianghu feel shocked. It's so strong. The man who left this sword scar had a strong and terrifying comprehension in sword essence of raging fire. The owner of this sword scar can definitely pass the 13th level of the Dragon Gate, Jianghu said in a surprise. He also grasped the sword essence of raging fire. So when seeing this sword scar, which contained a vast sword essence of raging fire, he could infer how powerful the expert who left the sword scar was. Jianghu turned to look at another sword scar beside him. Earth, everything contained in one stroke. This sword essence of earth is so awesome. Jianghu was totally stunned again. The sword essence of raging fire and the sword essence of earth contained in 2 sword scars that were surprisingly strong. But these 2 sword scars were the most common and inconspicuous ones among the thousands of sword scars in this open space. Jianghu raised his head and subconsciously looked again at the stone tablets standing in front of him. In the wasteland there were 6 dilapidated stone tablets standing there. Each stone tablet had a large and clear sword scar in the middle. But these 6 sword scars were far more powerful than the others that were on the ground of the wasteland. Jianghu looked at the sword scar on one of the dilapidated stone tablets at once. Jianghu was shocked by the stone tablet right in front of him. It was quite common and dilapidated. In the middle of the stone tablet was a huge sword scar that was a full 3 meters long. Jianghu looked at the huge sword scar crosscut in the middle of the stone tablet. He could even imagine that a long time ago, someone who had incredible power crosscut from it randomly with his sword drawn from the sheath. The sword scar was left on the stone, but the stone tablet was intact. How exquisite was the power he mastered. Sword essence of earth. This sword scar actually contains everything I can imagine about the sword essence of earth. Mysteriousness, profoundness, vast and boundlessness, even inclusion. Everything is included in it. Sword essence of gale. Tear, puncture and mistiness. Everything is also in it. Sword essence of raging fire. Sword essence of the water drop. Jin Wuxuang was totally shocked. In his view, this sword completely contained all the mysteriousness of 4 sword essences. More importantly, the 4 sword essences were perfectly combined. 4 sword essences, combined perfectly. Jin Wuxuang was totally obsessed. It was so amazing. Such swordsmanship was beyond his imagination. In his obsession, he could not help taking out his triple-kill sword and practicing his swordsmanship spontaneously. His thoughts and consciousness became immersed in the sword scar more deeply. Stop it! Jin Wuxuang shouted suddenly. Meanwhile, it was not until Jin Wuxuang bit his lip and started bleeding that he was able to free himself from the obsession. How dangerous! How dangerous! Jin Wuxuang bent his waist and placed his hands on his knees, breathing heavily. Cold sweat was running all over his body. I was nearly bewitched. Jin Wuxuang raised his head, looking at the stone tablets right in front of him again. However, he dared not meditate on those sword scars thoughtlessly anymore. Too strong. The few sword scars on the stone tablets were too profound and insolent. He was not qualified to meditate on them at all with his present comprehension of sword essence. If he meditated forcibly like that, he would be completely bewitched and become lost in it. Finally, he would lose his sword essence as well as his true intention. It was madness. The sword essence on the stone tablets is too esoteric and terrifying. If I meditate now, it is no different than killing myself. Jin Wuxuang shook his head. Then after a while he recovered completely from the nearly mad situation. After taking a deep breath, he examined the area again. This is the sword tomb? Jin Wuxuang was full of astonishment from the bottom of his heart. So amazing. Thousands of sword scars. Each was left by a supreme expert of true sword principle. The apprehension of the sword essence contained in each sword scar was extremely profound. Each sword scar was profound enough for him to become immersed in studying it for a long time. After being startled, Jin Wuxuang felt a burst of ecstasy. This sword essence contains the sword essence of the water drop. This contains both sword essences of raging fire and earth. It perfectly combines these 2 sword essences. This sword scar is arbitrary and fierce. What kind of sword essence does it contain? It does not feel like that of earth, fire, water or wind. But doesn't the power seem to be stronger? Jin Wuxuang stood beside these sword essences. He could not stop himself from taking out his triple-kill sword and practicing sometimes, losing himself in it. In Jin Wuxuang's view, these sword scars in front of him were even more precious than the 3 treasure places in Dragon Palace. It was indeed the most desirable place for warriors of sword principle to cultivate. However, as Jin Wuxuang was completely obsessed in meditating on these sword scars, 2 figures were void-walking and hovered above the nearby vast void of the sword tomb. Of these 2 people, one was an absolute beauty with snow-white skin and a cold expression, while the other was a burly man with a simple and honest look. This guy was lucky enough to survive by taking the heart-recovering pill, the absolute beauty coldly said. Lady, although this little guy is at a low realm, his talent is pretty good. He has already completely awakened the sword soul at such young age. The honest and burly man smiled. Well, that's just for the present. If it was, the absolute beauty's voice ceased and she didn't continue speaking. Instead, she turned to the burly man and said, Have you arranged the sword tomb guards already? Yes. Everything is arranged according to your orders, the burly man answered. Well, said the absolute beauty. She nodded her head and looked down. This guy really takes this sword tomb as a valuable opportunity. But he doesn't realize that opportunity appears along with crisis. 1 month later, when the sword guard appears, he will be tortured. I hope he can survive the sword tomb guards. Chapter 125, The Sword Tomb Guard. Chapter 125, The Sword Tomb Guard. In fact, the sword tomb was fraught with jeopardy, but Jin Wuxuang had no idea about it. He was immersed in the comprehension of those sword marks which contained a profusion of mysterious sword essences for him to explore. This move combined the sword essences of raging fire and the water drop perfectly. Though water and fire are originally incompatible, why were these 2 sword essences able to be perfectly combined? This move is so fast and sharp. The sword essence of Gale. Darkness. Endless darkness. What is the sword essence of this sword mark? While probing the sword marks one by one, Jian Wushuang noticed that the sword essences of Earth, Gale, Raging Fire and Water Drop were the most common essences for the sword marks. However, there were also sword marks containing essences that were different from those 4 sword essences. Besides Earth, Gale, Raging Fire and Water Drop, are there other sword essences in the world? Jian Wushuang couldn't help considering this. To observe, meditate, probe and finally understand it slowly. Under such circumstances, he began to improve his speed of comprehending sword essence at an alarming rate. A month passed in the blink of an eye. In the sword tomb, Jian Wushuang was sitting on the barren land with his legs crossed and there was a sword scar in front of him. This powerful sword scar perfectly combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire. How do I combine 2 different sword essences completely? Jian Wushuang was contemplating. After comprehending different kinds of sword essence, it was not only possible to perfectly transition between them, but to also combine them. When 2 sword essences were combined, a sword stroke could contain both sword essences while complementing each other. The power of the sword would reach an even higher level. Jian Wushuang had comprehended 4 sword essences and definitely hoped to combine them. But at this moment, the whole sword tomb shook violently. Not far away from the void, there was an absolute beauty with a cold face watching this scene. Suddenly, she lifted the corner of her mouth and said, "A month is up." "It's the sword tomb guard," said a sturdy and ingenious man that was standing nearby with a serious complexion. "I don't know if this little guy can defeat the sword tomb guard." "Defeat?" The absolute beauty giggled. "It is the sword tomb guard that I arranged in person. He will be lucky if he is able to survive their attack. When it comes to defeating sword tomb guard, I don't think he has what it takes. Trust me." Obviously, the absolute beauty was very confident in the sword tomb guard. The whole sword tomb was shaking violently. "What's the matter?" Jian Wushuang stood up with a trace of vigilance and began examining the area. Crack. One of the scars on the ground of the sword tomb abruptly cracked. Then that crack began expanding. After which, a giant figure slowly climbed out of that crack. This was a nearly 2-meter tall rock giant. The rock giant's body was made of rocks, but he had the same form as a human in regards to the hands, feet, and head. But there was no nose, mouth, or ears on the head, and only empty dark sockets with 2 red lights where the eyes should have been. "What is this?" Jian Wushuang was shocked. He had never seen a creature entirely made of rock. This rock giant held a giant sword in his hands, which was also made of stone. Although there was no sword edge, the giant sword itself had its own strength. After the rock giant appeared, the 2 red light in the empty eye sockets instantly locked onto Jian Wushuang. The soles of his feet kicked on the ground and the huge body rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Holding the triple kill sword, Jian Wushuang's expression grew gloomy. "Look, the sword tomb guard has begun to move." The absolute beauty hidden in the void smiled slightly and said, "Pray that the little boy can hold on for at least an hour after the sword tomb guard begins to attack. If he lasts an hour, he will be able to keep his life." Before she could even finish her words, the absolute beauty was suddenly stunned. The nearby sturdy and ingenious man was shocked as well, and his expression became odd. With a cold look in his eyes, Jian Wushuang directly and violently swung the triple kill sword when the sword tomb guard dashed toward him in a frenzy. The sword tomb guard's body was pierced by a gloomy sword light at an amazing speed, and then the bulky sword tomb guard was smashed by a formidable power. The bulky body of the sword tomb guard was scattered into a profusion of rock fragments. It only took an instant for the sword tomb guard to be defeated. "What?" The absolute beauty above the void was too shocked to speak. "He killed the sword tomb guard in a single move?" The sturdy and ingenious man also felt it was unbelievable. "It's his strength." The face of absolute beauty was cold. "His power is very high. He obviously just reached the gold core realm. However, his strength is at least comparable to the normal warriors in the exceptional gold core realm." "My lady, you miscalculated." The sturdy and ingenious man looked at her. "How could I know that his power was this strong?" The absolute beauty shouted with a low voice. "I thought he was just an ordinary warrior in the initial gold core realm. So I arranged for him to compete with a sword tomb guard at the same level as his. But I am surprised. He is stronger than a normal warrior at the same level, so the sword tomb guard was defeated in one move." The sword tomb guard was not suddenly born. It was actually arranged by this absolute beauty. However, the sword tomb guard she arranged was based on the Jian Wushuang's realm. When Jian Wushuang came to the ancestors' land, he was dying and his aura was at the initial gold core realm. Therefore, the absolute beauty selected a sword tomb guard at the same level. If Jian Wushuang was really a normal warrior in the initial gold core realm, he would not have defeated the sword tomb guard so easily. But what was the result? The truth is that Jian Wushuang is in the initial gold core realm, but his strength is comparable to someone in the exceptional gold core realm, or maybe even someone stronger. Who could expect that? The absolute beauty also did not expect it. Thus, the first sword tomb guard she arranged was quickly defeated by Jian Wushuang's single move. He was lucky. But his luck won't last, said the absolute beauty in a muffled voice. Regard him as a warrior of the exceptional gold core realm and change the sword tomb guard. This, the sturdy and ingenious man asked, My lady, isn't this little guy really just at the initial gold core realm? It's unfair to treat him the same as someone in the exceptional gold core realm. Oh, unfair? Though he is in the initial gold core realm, his strength is greater than the exceptional gold core realm. It's natural to treat him like someone in the exceptional gold core realm. You should do what I say without hesitation, the absolute beauty said. Okay. The robust man nodded slowly and then rearranged it. Chapter 126, Increase the difficulty. Chapter 126, Increase the difficulty. In the sword tomb, Jian Wushuang was standing beside the rubble. While looking at the rubble formed by the sword tomb guard, his eyebrows slightly crumpled. What the hell was that rock giant I just saw? Is it a test in the sword tomb? Jian Wushuang muttered. But it's too weak if it is a test. The motion is quite big and the strength is too weak. Jian Wushuang shook his head and said. If the absolute beauty heard this, she would certainly be embarrassed. The sword tomb guard was personally arranged by her, and she was pretty confident that Jian Wushuang would suffer miserably. Not only that, she thought he would have trouble just surviving. However, what was Jian Wushuang's comment about it? Too weak. Jian Wushuang did not know that this sword tomb guard was arranged for him according to his realm. They thought he just stepped into the initial gold core realm, so they arranged a weak sword tomb guard. But next time they would arrange for a stronger one which would not be so easy to deal with. The sword tomb guard that suddenly appeared had astonished Jian Wushuang, but he did not care about it too much. He spent the following time there alone, quietly comprehending those sword scars. A month elapsed in a flash. WMBO. The whole sword tomb shook violently again. With the previous experience in mind, Jian Wushuang was calm this time. Very soon, a huge sword tomb guard appeared in front of him. It has only been a month since the last time the sword tomb shook. That must mean a rock giant will appear in the sword tomb every month. Jian Wushuang muttered. How much stronger is this one compared to the last one? He muttered. If one rock giant appears every month, then their strengths would surely increase. It would be pointless if their strength keeps same, Jian Wushuang thought. Shortly after that, Jian Wushuang started fighting with this rock giant. A sword shadow directly flew toward the rock giant. However, the rock giant fiercely raised his hand and slammed it toward the air, instantly splitting the air. Jian Wushuang was pushed back by this sudden burst of strength. Shit. There was a slight change on Jian Wushuang's face. As soon as the rock giant displayed his first movement, Jian Wushuang immediately realized that this rock giant was much stronger than the one that he easily defeated last month. This one had a much higher level of power. The one that appeared last month could easily be destroyed with just a single wave of Jian Wushuang's sword. But this one actually knocked Jian Wushuang backward. Interesting, Jian Wushuang said. He smiled, and in the following moment he released his full power and threw himself into the fight with the rock giant. The atmosphere was violent as Jian Wushuang thoroughly displayed his swordsmanship. In the void nearby, the absolute beauty and a strong man were watching calmly. I don't believe he will defeat this sword tomb guard as easily as the one I arranged before, the absolute beauty said in a cold voice. But my lady, it's obvious that this one is not Jian Wushuang's opponent either, the strong man said in a deep voice. The absolute beauty watched with a stern expression. She could also tell that even though Jian Wushuang did not instantly defeat the rock giant, he was obviously more powerful. His comprehension of sword essence has improved a lot, the absolute beauty said inside. 2 months ago, when Jian Wushuang was meditating on the sword scars in the sword tomb, she could tell his level in sword essence. Now 2 months passed and his comprehension of the sword essences had obviously reached a whole new level. In fact, only Jian Wushuang knew that his comprehension in sword essence had not just improved a little, it had improved significantly. In the past 2 months, Jian Wushuang had been studying and comprehending essences contained in the sword scars. His understanding of sword essence had been increasing at an amazing speed, which was far faster than when he was cultivating an outside world or in Dragon Palace. After all, neither the outside world nor Dragon Palace was like Sword Tomb, which had thousands of sword scars left behind by experts of sword principle. In 2 months his progress was tremendous. Chew. A sword shadow leaped out above the rock giant's sword, then Jian Wushuang's sword struck like a viper and directly stabbed into the rock giant's stout arm, causing debris to drop down from its arm. Then with a simple strike from Jian Wushuang the rock giant fell down. This rock giant's comprehension of the sword essence is average, but his strength and speed are terrible. However, he is much stronger than the average gold core warrior. Just speaking on overall strength, he should be stronger than Xiao Meng, Jian Wushuang muttered. Xiao Meng. A person who fought with Jian Wushuang for a long time. However, the overall strength of the rock giant in front of him was not weaker than Xiao Meng. If it was 2 months ago, Jian Wushuang would have struggled against this rock giant, but now... Swoosh! A sword light flashed at an amazing speed, easily passing by the rock giant's sword. With a quick slash, the rock giant's whole arm crumbled. Another sword slash followed, falling directly onto the giant's head. Although the rock giant's head was very hard, it could not resist this sword, which contained sword essence of earth. All of a sudden, the whole head shattered and he crumbled into a pile of rubble. In the void nearby, seeing the sword tomb guard defeated easily by Jian Wushuang again, the absolute beauty immediately looked cold. He's very talented. In 2 months he had such great progress? The absolute beauty said in a cold voice. His progress really is substantial, the strong man nodded and said. Second brother, make a few adjustments to the sword tomb guards I arranged, and make it more difficult for him, said the absolute beauty. Increase the difficulty? The strong man was astonished and asked. My lady, this little guy only has an initial gold core. No matter what, it's already unfair that we are treating him like someone in the exceptional gold core realm. It's too unfair if we increase the difficulty again. Not too much at all, just do as I say, said the absolute beauty. The strong man pondered for a while, but he immediately nodded helplessly. In the ancestors' land, this absolute beauty was the eldest sister. She had the last word for everything. For the test in the sword tomb, the difficulty had been increased by a lot. However, Jian Wushuang did not notice. He did not think about it too much after he defeated the second rock giant. After that, he continued to study those sword scars. Those sword scars had helped him immensely. His comprehension of sword essence was rising at an amazing speed. Chapter 127, Ceasing. Chapter 127, Ceasing. During the time Jian Wushuang stayed in the sword tomb of the ancestors' land, the Qianzong dynasty was in complete chaos, bathed in a bloody rain and filled with a murderous wind. Dragon Palace's anger was dreadful, and the revenge that Dragon Palace took on Blood Feather Tower was swift and violent. Blood Feather Tower suffered severe damage under the maniacal attacks from Dragon Palace in merely 2 months. Many hidden strongholds were razed to the ground, and a great number of assassins were killed by the experts from Dragon Palace. At the same time, other powerful and hidden forces were also crazily attacking Blood Feather Tower. These 2 months were the most miserable in all of Blood Feather Tower's history. The assassins of Blood Feather Tower tried their best to hide, not even daring to show themselves and especially not carrying out any missions. Tottering and falling, Blood Feather Tower, one of the 3 hegemonies of Qianzong dynasty, was on the verge of breaking down. However, just as everyone thought Blood Feather Tower was fade away like smoke and become history, suddenly the people seeking revenge against Blood Feather Tower quieted down in just 1 day. Yes, they all stopped for an unknown reason. Dragon Palace stopped attacking. Those powerful hidden forces aiming at Blood Feather Tower also stopped. Except for a few forces that wanted to take advantage of the chaos to claim vengeance, the strongest forces, the forces Blood Feather Tower feared the most, all ceased fire. They stopped on almost the same day. And soon after, Blood Feather Tower swiftly rallied its power. So unexpected. All of this happened so quickly, startling all the other forces and experts in Qianzong dynasty. The abrupt halting of the crazy vengeance toward Bloodfeather Tower was quite baffling to everyone. In Dragon Palace, many top-notch experts had returned. In a palace, the 2 palace masters and several temple masters gathered around. Palace Master White drank alone with a bottle of wine in her hand, wearing an extremely cold expression. "Asshole. I won't accept it." After drinking a sip of wine, Palace Master White roared in a low voice, while Palace Master Black and the other temple masters remained silent. "It's obvious that it won't take long to eliminate Bloodfeather Tower entirely. Why did that person order us to stop attacking at this exact moment? What on earth is he thinking?" Palace Master White was still complaining. "Enough, White, you should stop complaining. Since the Temple Master gave the order in person, he must have his reasons. We only need to obey it," Palace Master Black said with a sigh. "Obey it?" Palace Master White snorted, feeling extremely unreconciled but also helpless. The Temple Master referred to the Temple Master of Golden Dragon Palace. Although being the core of Golden Dragon Palace was still subordinated to it. And the Temple Master of Golden Dragon Palace was the monarch of Tianzong Dynasty. The monarch personally gave the order, so those experts in Dragon Palace dared not disobey. Beside a stone table in a manor, Wang Yuan was holding a letter in his hand and reading it with icy cold eyes. The more he read, the stiffer his expression became. After finishing, Wang Yuan was so furious that he slammed the letter on the table. "Bastard. Just a Bloodfeather Tower. How come it can't be wiped out?" Wang Yuan's anger welled up in his body. Next to him, Danjiu stood respectfully in a purple robe. "Young lord, the sect master definitely has his own considerations by asking you to stop attacking Bloodfeather Tower, so..." Before Danjiu finished his words, he noticed the cold stare from Wang Yuan. Danjiu felt as if his heart missed a beat and he stopped talking immediately. Wang Yuan remained silent for a long time. He took a deep breath, lowered his voice and said, "Since my father gave this order, I have to follow his words and stop chasing Bloodfeather Tower, but Lin Yun, the man who attacked third brother and forced him to jump into the abyss, must die. As long as you don't aim at the entire Bloodfeather Tower, only one purple-masked assassin should not be a problem." Danjiu nodded. "All right then, let's deal with Lin Yun. You'd better capture him alive," Wang Yuan said with a cold snort. "Yes." Danjiu nodded and left immediately. "Third brother?" Wang Yuan stood in the manor looking up at the sky, eyes flashing, and yelled, "You can rest assured. Your big brother will avenge you." At the same time, in a secret chamber, several figures in bloody robes stood respectfully in front of Su Ro. "Master really ordered me to stop attacking Bloodfeather Tower?" Su Ro's face was veiled with a hint of chill. But she also felt puzzled. Why would a little Bloodfeather Tower cause my master to back down? "Since master ordered it, I'll let it go," Su Ro sighed, but a trace of grief emerged in her eyes. Poor third brother. Tianzong Dynasty soon calmed down again. As time went by, Jian Wushuang slowly faded from the memories of all the forces and experts. In the Sword Tomb of the Ancestors' Land. It had been a year and 3 months since Jian Wushuang came to the Sword Tomb. During that time, he had been obsessed with meditating on these sword scars, trying to comprehend their secrets. Meanwhile, 15 Sword Tomb guards had appeared during this time, 1 guard per month. Among the 15 sword guards, the first one was rather weak. But, starting with the second one, the strength of the Sword Tomb guards was generally strong, and each one was stronger than the previous one. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang's comprehension in sword essence increased while meditating on the sword scars, so he was able to defeat all the Sword Tomb guards in succession. If he failed to make progress for even 1 month, he would have been killed by the Sword Tomb guard that appeared that month. Right now, in the open space of the Sword Tomb, Jian Wushuang was practicing swordsmanship with his eyes closed. Streaks of sword shadows thrust out ceaselessly. Shapeless wind, boundless howling. Swiftest fire, wildest rage. Wind howls on fire, and fire rages by wind. Sword essence of gale. Sword essence of raging fire. Jian Wushuang murmured. His sword moves were getting faster and faster. Suddenly, a dazzling sword strike thrust out, directly and explosively piercing the void, tearing up everything in its path. Shwa! The sword edge stabbed in the void, and a flame wave spread out like a hurricane. The sword essences of gale and raging fire, 2 totally different sword essences, were combined in this one sword move. At the same time, Jian Wushuang's eyes opened, radiating an unprecedented light. The sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire have been combined together. It's done. Chapter 128 2 years. Chapter 128, 2 years. At the moment when Jian Wushuang combined the sword essences of Raging Fire and Gale, the robust man who had been silently watching from the void above the sword tomb immediately smiled and said, "It only took him 1 year and 3 months to combine 2 sword essences." "Hang, he is lucky," the Absolute Beauty coldly groaned. After combining them, the sword moves Jian Wushuang executed were even more terrifying than before. Since his strength had increased again, his fight with the sword tomb guards became easier. Winter came again. The outside world was filled with drifting snowflakes, but in the ancestors' land, beneath the abyss, it was still dark. It had been 2 years since Jian Wushuang came to the sword tomb. "It's been 2 years. Let the boy leave," said the Absolute Beauty. "In addition, give him this sword skill." "This is selfless sword technique?" The robust man had a puzzled expression. "In the past 2 years, I have constantly increased the difficulty of the sword tomb guards." Was too harsh. This sword skill is a kind of compensation for him. After finishing her words, the Absolute Beauty turned around and disappeared into the void. The robust man smiled and immediately dropped down. Down below, Jian Wushuang had just defeated the 24th sword tomb guard since entering the sword tomb. Not enough. Whether it's the sword essence of earth or water drop, it is not enough. Jian Wushuang frowned slowly. 9 months ago, he combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire to form the Fiery Wind sword essence. After combining them successfully, he naturally wanted to combine a 3rd sword essence. However, the combination of 3 sword essences was more difficult than 2 sword essences. After 9 months of hard work, the sword essences of Earth and Water Drop were close to combining with the Fiery Wind sword essence. But he was unsuccessful. "It's been 2 years. Jian Wushuang sighed in silence, looking at the numerous sword scars around him. In these 2 years he studied many of the sword scars, but it was still only a small section of the whole sword tomb. He still could not comprehend the most exceptional sword scars, like the sword scars engraved on the 6 stone tablets. Even now, the sword tomb was still filled with endless opportunities. However, when he came to the sword tomb, he heard the conversation while he was barely conscious, so he knew he could only stay in the sword tomb for 2 years. Now that 2 years was up, he should be leaving if there were no accidents. Sure enough, just when the idea of leaving occurred to him, he saw a robust man descend and appear in front of him. Jian Wushuang had a strange feeling as he stared at this man. There was a sense of horror that made his heart tremble while looking at this man, even though he was standing here like a normal person with no aura. The most important point was that no life could be felt from the robust man. He didn't seem human, more like a puppet. 2 years have passed. Follow me. The robust man's expression was cold. Jian Wushuang nodded. Although he was extremely intrigued by the sword tomb, he had to leave. "Sir, I want to ask some questions about the ancestors' land." On the way, Jian Wushuang also wanted to ask something. After all, he was still very confused and filled with countless questions, but he was rebuked by the robust man when he opened his mouth. "Shut up. Based on your current strength, you are not qualified to ask anything about the ancestors' land. You must pass a test after reaching the Yinyang Void Realm if you want to know." Jian Wushuang was startled and did not dare to ask again. Here it is. Not long after, the robust man and Jian Wushuang came to an empty area. There were many mysterious cracks on the surface of this empty area. As the man put a special gem into the mysterious crack immediately burst with dazzling light. The space in front of Jian Wushuang split and a huge crack which could accommodate a person appeared. "What is this?" Jian Wushuang stared at the huge rift in shock. He had seen plenty of huge rifts on the ground. And, with his current strength, his sword strikes could easily leave a deep crack in the ground. However, this rift in front of him was not on the ground but in the void. "It's a wormhole that can connect 2 different spaces," the robust man said. "Wormhole? Connect 2 different spaces? There is another space?" Jian Wushuang could not help but ask. "You will know when you get there." The robust man did not answer directly. "Since you have come to the ancestors' land, we can't let you go home empty-handed. Now this sword skill is yours. Though it is only the first half of the volume, it will be useful." Then the robust man gave Jian Wushuang the sword skill. Jian Wushuang took it and said, "Selfless sword technique? Okay, now you have to leave." After saying this, the robust man directly grabbed Jian Wushuang by the collar and threw him straight into the rift. Jian Wushuang was thrown into the crack without resistance and disappeared in an extremely dark hidden cave. The cave was quite old. No one had visited it in a long time, so the wall was covered with moss. On the empty ground at the center of the cave, many mysterious cracks suddenly radiated a dazzling light. The void above the mysterious cracks was ripped apart, leaving a streak in the huge rift. Then a figure dashed out. Bang! Jian Wushuang's body slammed into one of the stone walls, making the walls shake so much that gravel fell from them. That really hurt. Jian Wushuang groaned because of the pain. After a while, he pulled himself together and began to look around. A cave. Jian Wushuang looked at his surroundings. Where is this? Am I still in the endless mountain range? Jian Wushuang immediately stumbled along the cave path toward the exit. The exit of this cave was blocked by a pile of stones. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang brandished his sword and directly cleave a path through those stones, then he stepped outside of the cave. This is... When Jian Wushuang walked out of the cave and saw the vibrant primordial forest blanketed in the floating black fog, his look immediately became bizarre. The dark forest. It should be the dark forest. 3 years ago, the first time he was hunted by Blood Feather Tower. When he escaped from the Sword Marquis Mansion, in order to evade Blood Feather Tower, Sima Bu and he eventually decided to cross the dark forest. Jian Wushuang was familiar with this area because he had stayed here for 4 months. But what surprised him was that the other end of the wormhole was in the dark forest. The dark forest was adjacent to Tianyan province and next to Bahui Commandery. Chapter 129, Back to Tianyan province. Chapter 129, Back to Tianyan province. It has been 3 years since I left Sword Marquis Mansion. I should go back. Making up his mind, Jian Wushuang went straight toward Tianyan province. On the way, he also began to delve into the selfless sword technique. The selfless sword technique the robust man gave him only had the first half of the volume. It had a total of 6 sword skills. Jian Wushuang was attracted to this volume after reading its introduction. The selfless sword technique was different from all other sword skills Jian Wushuang had ever studied. Like formless sword arts, formless sword wave, sword skill of blood and fire, and reincarnation sword skill. All those sword skills were only for one sword essence. The formless sword arts target the sword essence of Gale, while the formless sword wave target the sword essence of Earth. But the selfless sword technique target 4 sword essences, not just one. No matter which sword essence you comprehended, you could study and delve into the selfless sword technique. Furthermore, the selfless sword technique was even more suitable for warriors who had combined different sword essences. The power of the 6 sword skills depended on the comprehension level of sword essence. Jian Wushuang had now perfectly combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire. What he needed was a sword skill which could execute 2 sword essences at the same time. The selfless sword technique was more or less suitable. Jian Wushuang immediately began to delve into the first move of the selfless sword technique. The first move was called Idealistic Form. 2 days later, on his way through the dark forest, Jian Wushuang took out his triple kill sword. Idealism. Solipsism. Jian Wushuang murmured in a deep thought. The triple kill sword flew out like a streak of light and pounded on a strong tree. The sword shadow that combined both sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire exploded. Bang! The trunk of the entire tree was directly pierced and a circular hole with a diameter of more than 20 centimeters appeared. The center of the entire tree was completely hollowed out. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang's eyes lightened. This is idealistic form, its power is very strong. Jian Wushuang thought, I only combine 2 sword essences, forming the fiery wind sword essence. Its power would be even more terrifying if I could combine 3 or 4 sword essences. Jian Wushuang was also very excited. The experience in the ancestors' land benefited him a lot. The first was his cultivation. Although he focused his mind and body on delving into sword essences over those 2 years, leaving little time for cultivation, his spiritual power still increased faster than ordinary warriors simply because of the heavenly creation skill. Now, he had already broken through from the initial gold core and reached the profound gold core realm. Actually, his supreme golden core was 100 times stronger than an expert at the same level. When he was in the initial gold core realm, the strength he could release was stronger than normal warriors in the exceptional Gold Core realm. Now, after reaching the profound Gold Core realm, his strength would be matchless among the warriors in the Gold Core realm when he released his full power. And his progress in sword essence was even greater. His comprehension in all 4 sword essences had advanced by leaps and bounds. The sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire had even been combined perfectly. Now he had also had the selfless sword technique. His strength as a whole was much stronger than it was 2 years ago. A few days later, Jian Wushuang walked out of the dark forest, and what appeared in front of him was the Tianyin province that he was quite familiar with. Tianyin province. Bahui Commandery. I am back. It was still bustling in the Bahui Commandery. While wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat, Jian Wushuang appeared in a restaurant. Near the window on the second floor of the restaurant, having ordered a pot of wine, he drank alone with his eyes focused on the huge mansion outside of the window. It was also bustling in the mansion, and Jian Wushuang could even see some disciples of the Marquis's mansion practicing sword skills on the drill ground. It is the same as before, Jian Wushuang secretly thought. Sword Marquis Mansion. His roots. He lived there for a full 16 years. 3 years ago, Sword Marquis Mansion was greatly troubled because of me. 4 elders also died because of me. I don't even know the current state of the Sword Pavilion. Jian Wushuang was anxious. In the Sword Pavilion, his father had worked hard for a long time. When he was young, his aim was to inherit the position of Sword Pavilion Master. Who could have expected that an incident would occur when he was taking pains to accomplish his goal? After that incident, he, the future Sword Pavilion Master, had to leave the Tianyin province, and the 4 great elders of the Sword Pavilion were all killed. It can be said that the backbone of the Sword Pavilion was gone overnight. Therefore, Jian Wushuang was very anxious about the current state of the Sword Pavilion. But at this moment, rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat, heavy footsteps were heard from the outside streets, and the whole street shook slightly. People in the middle of the street scattered. Jian Wushuang looked through the window to the source of the footsteps. What he saw were 3 large wildebeests slowly coming from the end of the street. Wildebeests were generally a spirit beast in the spiritual sea realm. Their strength was normal. But they were gentle and relatively easy to tame, and their speed was amazingly fast. Therefore, some big forces would tame a few wildebeests for riding. On the 3 wildebeests there were 3 figures. 2 men and a woman. Jian Wushuang could not help but tilt his lips when he saw the woman on the middle wildebeest. Jian Meng'er. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. This was beyond his expectations. The first disciple of the Marquis's mansion he met after coming back was Jian Meng'er, who had tangled with him before. Profound Gold Core realm? Not bad. Jian Wushuang was smiling. He could see that the aura of spiritual power from Jian Meng'er had reached the profound Gold Core realm. It must be noted that Jian Meng'er's age was the same as his. He was only 19 years old this year. A 19-year-old warrior at the profound Gold Core realm was already very marvelous. When she was defeated by me 3 years ago, she went to the Tianyuan sword sect to practice with her great master. According to speculation, within 3 years she was not allowed to leave the Tianyuan sword sect. She also came back today? What a coincidence. Jian Wushuang's expression became odd. Under his watch, Jian Meng'er and the other 2 people on the wildebeests entered Sword Marquis Mansion. At the same time, Jian Wushuang heard the comments from the people around him. Is the girl on the wildebeest Jian Meng'er, the exceptional genius from Sword Marquis Mansion? Yes, it's her. It is said that she went to the Tianyuan sword sect to practice after being defeated by Jian Wushuang 3 years ago. She had never shown up since then. Now she finally returns after 3 years. It's normal to come back. After all, the situation Sword Marquis Mansion is terrible. If she doesn't come back, Sword Marquis Mansion will disappear. Several warriors were talking about it. Although their voice was lowered, Jian Wushuang could still clearly hear what they said. Sword Marquis Mansion will disappear if Jian Meng'er didn't return? Jian Wushuang slightly narrowed his eyes, and in his dark pupil as a streak of cold light flashed. Chapter 130 Inside the Celestial Immortal Residence. Chapter 130, Inside the Celestial Immortal Residence. The 3 warriors were still talking, and Jian Wushuang was listening carefully. Hey, I heard that Sword Marquis Mansion had already sent out invitations to the 3 chiefs of the Fierce Beast Gang to meet at Jianghu tomorrow. I am afraid the purpose of the meeting is to fight and see who is stronger. One of them has been a leader in Bahui Commandery for many years, while the other one, the Fierce Beast Gang, led by the three Su brothers, has just appeared recently. This will be an interesting fight. I'm afraid that Sword Marquee Mansion will be in danger this time. Although the Fierce Beast Gang appeared not long ago, the three Su brothers are well-known experts in Tianyin province, especially the eldest brother, Su Long, who is an expert on the Earthly Dragon list. There is no one who can compete with him in the entire Sword Marquee Mansion. That's right. Sword Marquee Mansion is also aware of the pressure, so they urgently requested for Jian Ming'er to come back. After all, she is a core disciple in Tianyuan Sword Sect, and her power is quite impressive as well. Everything will be settled tomorrow. The three men talked casually, ignoring the people around them. After hearing what they said, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. The three Su brothers? Su Long? Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. He knew that Su Long ranked 91st on the Earthly Dragon list, which was even a few places higher than Su Lai. If it was in 2 years ago, Su Long's strength was enough for Jian Wushuang to pay a little attention to him. But now Jian Wushuang could completely ignore him. The Fierce Beast Gang will fight against Sword Marquee Mansion to see who is stronger tomorrow? Interesting. Jian Wushuang smiled and then continued to drink. The next day, inside the Celestial Immortal Residence. The news that Sword Marquee Mansion would meet the Fierce Beast Gang at Celestial Immortal Residence today had already spread throughout the entire Bahui Commandery. So, the original lively Celestial Immortal Residence was empty and lonely today. Everyone knew that there might be a fierce battle at Celestial Immortal Residence today. Naturally, ordinary warriors didn't want to get involved. Of course, there was one exception. It was a black-robed man with a bamboo hat and a long sword. He had been drinking alone in the corner of the second floor of the Celestial Immortal Residence since early morning. The waiters there came to persuade him to leave, but he didn't say a word and remained sitting there. At noon, footsteps could be heard from the stairs, followed by a large group of people. Those people came from Sword Marquee Mansion, and Jian Wushuang knew some of them. The leader of them was Jian Xinhong, who was the Sword Marquee Mansion master. Jian Xinhong's cultivation exuded the aura of the exceptional gold core realm. In regards to spiritual power, he was obviously the strongest present. And next to Jian Xinhong, there were 3 others in the primordial gold core realm. It was Jian Ming'er and the 2 core disciples of Tianyuan Sword Sect. It should be a while before the 3 Su brothers arrive, so let's sit down first, said Jian Xinhong. Then he, Jian Ming'er, and 2 other disciples of the Tianyuan Sword Sect sat down at the table. The other warriors of Sword Marquee Mansion stood next to them. Ming'er, today's meeting is up to you 3, said Jian Xinhong while frowning, full of worries. Our Sword Marquee Mansion never thought to throw the 3 Su brothers out of Bahui Commandery. Instead, we were willing to make concessions and give them Bahui Commandery's leadership. We can even give them some other benefits as long as they stop attacking. Jian Xinhong spoke in a hopeless manner. Before, Sword Marquee Mansion was indeed the overlord of Bahui Commandery. But since the Fierce Beast Gang appeared, they had suffered suppression from the Fierce Beast Gang in all aspects, not even having the strength to fight back. They had no choice since strength determined everything. The 3 leaders of the Fierce Beast Gang, which were the 3 Su brothers, all possessed excellent strength. The eldest brother, Su Long, was even on the Earthly Dragon list. An expert like him was not someone that Sword Marquee Mansion could compete against. Mansion Master, don't worry. As long as we 3 are here, Su Long won't dare to go too far. After all, behind us is the Tianyuan Sword Sect. You should at least care about the reputation of Tianyuan Sword Sect. What's more, even if it really comes down to a battle, the 2 of us and Ming'er could defeat Su Long together, said the purple-haired disciple with a laugh. Experts on the Earthly Dragon list are indeed very powerful, but his strength is also limited. Moreover, Su Long is only ranked 91st, and his strength should only be a little stronger than the average warrior in the exceptional gold core realm. Both Mengyu and I are also in the exceptional gold core realm. Together, with Ming'er, whose strength is comparable to the exceptional gold core realm, we can easily deal with Su Long, said the other disciple of Tianyuan Sword Sect. These 2 disciples of the Tianyuan Sword Sect were named Mengyu and Zhuyu. Both of them were in the exceptional gold core realm, and they were pretty confident in their strength. Don't be too confident. The experts on the Earthly Dragon list are not simple, Jian Xinhong shook his head and said. He had personally faced Su Long, but had to run away after just 3 moves. He knew clearly that there was a huge gap between the experts of the Earthly Dragon list and the ordinary warriors of the exceptional Gold Core realm. Every expert on the Earthly Dragon list was able to defeat a group of warriors in the exceptional Gold Core realm alone. This was a fact. Unfortunately, senior brother Ling Feng went out to travel. Otherwise, with him here, Su Long would not dare to be so unbridled, Jian Ming'er said in a low voice. Ling Feng was the strongest among the young generation of the Tianyuan sword sect. He was the strongest genius that Jian Ming'er had ever met. He was only 23 years old, but he had already ranked 41st on the Earthly Dragon list. He was the only person that was listed on the Earthly Dragon list in the entire Tianyuan sword sect. Ling Feng had a good relationship with her, and they already shared some special feelings. Ming'er, the 3 Su brothers are not qualified to compete with senior brother Ling Feng. Besides, we 3 can defeat him easily, Meng Yu and Zhu Yu said without taking it seriously. Ming'er, I heard that you were defeated by a person in Sword Marquee Mansion 3 years ago. Where is that person? Now that Sword Marquee Mansion is in danger, why is he not here? Meng Yu asked suddenly. Jian Wushuang. Jian Ming'er thought, with a slight cold expression on her face. The words of Jian Wushuang had left a scar in her heart. Even after 3 years it was still there. She would never forget that 3 years ago, the useless person that she looked down upon had surpassed her in only 2 months, causing her to trip at the last step of her plan. During these 3 years she did her best to cultivate and improve her strength while in the Tianyuan sword sect. She put in more effort than ordinary people. The most important reason for her to do so was that she wanted to compete with Jian Wushuang again. She wanted to erase the humiliation she suffered 3 years ago and extricate herself from the nightmare brought on by Jian Wushuang. She thought she could meet Jian Wushuang and fight with him again when she returned to Sword Marquee Mansion this time. However, she did not expect that when she returned, she would hear that Jian Wushuang had left Sword Marquee Mansion 3 years ago, and no one knew where he was. Chapter 131 3 Su Brothers. Chapter 131, 3 Su Brothers. He only defeated you 3 years ago by luck. In the past 3 years, you have reached an excellent cultivation level. With plenty of treasures to assist you, your strength has been improving day by day, which is not something ordinary people can achieve. I do not believe that person who defeated you 3 years ago is qualified to be your opponent now, Meng Yu sneered and said. Maybe. Jian Ming'er nodded slightly. She somewhat agreed. Indeed, she was the core disciple of the Tianyuan sword sect. In the past 3 years she had received the best resources for cultivation, and a large number of experts personally instructed her, which helped her strength improved greatly. But for Jian Wushuang, he was alone, no instructions from experts and no cultivation resources. How much improvement could he have made in the past 3 years? Maybe he has not even achieved the Gold Core realm yet. How stupid of me to treat him as my opponent, letting him be a stumbling block in my heart for the past 3 years, Jian Ming'er thought and smiled indifferently. Those 2 disciples of the Tianyuan sword sect continued talking with Jian Ming'er. They did not know that what they said was clearly heard by the black-robed swordsman, who was wearing a bamboo hat and sitting in the corner. The black-robed swordsman was listening without saying anything, just drinking alone. However, his face, which was hidden under the bamboo hat, had a weird smile. Dang. A low and powerful sound of footsteps was heard from the stairs again. Suddenly, the people in the Sword Marquee Mansion all looked serious. A bunch of people walked up, with 3 walking at the front. Those 3 leaders were very strong and they looked a little bit like each other. The aura they released was very tyrannical, especially the large dark man in the middle. His aura was as violent as an ancient fierce beast. This person was Su Long. Jian Ming'er, Meng Yu and Zhu Yu, all of them looked grim. Although they spoke in an easy and relaxed way, they still felt a little bit scared when they faced Su Long. They could even sense who was stronger just from the aura he released. Jian Xinhong, what did you gather us 3 here for? Just be straight. Su Long seemed unconcerned and sat on a chair. His 2 brothers and other beastly people were standing beside him. Su Long, the reason I invited you to meet here today is to discuss the armistice between Sword Marquee Mansion and the Fierce Beast Gang, Jian Xinhong said seriously. In the past 1 month, there were several fights between us, no matter publicly or secretly, both brought us a big loss. Without waiting for Jian Xinhong to finish, Su Long interrupted him and said, You are wrong, you are the one suffering a big loss, not us. After the battles, my Fierce Beast Gang did indeed lose a lot of people, but we also gained more reputation. More and more people joined to help accomplish our goal. Many of them had great hatred towards your sword marquee mansion. So our overall strength is not getting weaker. Instead we are getting stronger. So, if you just want to talk nonsense with me, then we do not need to talk anymore. Jian Xinhong looked a little bit awkward. He knew what Su Long said was pretty true. And that was the key reason that he did not dare to continue fighting with the Fierce Beast gang. If they keep fighting with them, they would just make the Sword Marquee Mansion more and more miserable. In the end they might be destroyed by the Fierce Beast gang. Su Long, my Sword Marquee Mansion is willing to make some concessions, Jian Xinhong seriously said. From today on we will try our best to restrain our disciples from conflicting with your people. At the same time the title of Bahui Commandery Hegemon is yours. Besides that, we will give you 10% of our properties. What do you think? Oh. Su Long looked a little bit excited. That is something worth talking about. However, 10% is too little. 10% is a lot, Jian Xinhong said in a low voice. Mr. Su Long, Jian Ming'er suddenly stood up and said, My name is Jian Ming'er, a disciple of Tianyuan Sword Sect. My great master is the elder of Tianyuan Sword Sect, Shui Hanxin. For the sake of her, please don't be so hard on our Sword Marquee Mansion. Jian Ming'er sounded very polite, but the truth was that she was giving Su Long pressure using the Tianyuan Sword Sect and her great master, Shui Hanxin. Tianyuan Sword Sect? Su Long glanced at Jian Ming'er and said with a slight smile, I heard a long time ago that a girl from Sword Marquee Mansion became a core disciple of the Tianyuan Sword Sect. So you are that girl. But you are looking down on me. Tianyuan Sword Sect is indeed very powerful, and it's not someone I dare to provoke. However, you are just a core disciple, you can't represent the Tianyuan Sword Sect. In regards to your great master Shui Hanxin? In the entire Tianyuan Sword Sect, except those old Yinyang Void Realms, Ling Feng is the only person who is qualified to be my opponent. Shui Hanxin is nothing to me. After saying this, Su Long looked towards Jian Xinhong again and continued, Jian Xinhong, don't think getting several disciples from the Tianyuan Sword Sect can scare me. Let me tell you the truth, I want 90% of your properties. No negotiation. Otherwise, Sword Marquee Mansion will become history. 90%? Jian Xinhong looked at him coldly. Jian Ming'er also had a cold expression. You are looking to die. Mengyu and Zhuyu beside them were super angry. Ming'er stopped talking to him. Let's directly fight with him, he needs a lesson from the disciples of Tianyuan Sword Sect. Mengyu cried with a low voice. Exactly, he isn't even ranked 90th on the earthly dragon list. We don't need to be afraid of him, Zhuyu also cried out angrily. Jian Ming'er did not say anything. However, the light purple long sword appearing in her hands had shown her attitude. Haha, you disciples of Tianyuan Sword Sect really do not understand the situation clearly. Seeing their actions, Su Long laughed. Then he glanced at a burly man next to him. Third brother, you deal with those three young guys. After all, they are core disciples of Tianyuan Sword Sect. We can't kill them, but we can teach them a lesson, Su Long said. Don't worry big brother, I can handle it, said Su Bao, the third of the three Su brothers. He smiled, then walked forward with heavy steps. You three fight with me together, Su Bao said coldly. You are looking to die. Mengyu and Zhuyu were super angry. As disciples of Tianyuan Sword Sect, they were quite proud of themselves. And since they entered this restaurant, Su Long was their only opponent. In regards to Su Long's two brothers, they were nothing to them. So when they heard what Su Long said, they were infuriated. Soon after, Zhuyu waved his sword, releasing his spiritual power, and stabbed towards Su Bao. Chapter 132, You Bothered Me. Chapter 132, You Bothered Me. Zhuyu took action before Jian Ming'er and Mengyu were still standing there. An awe-inspiring spirit fiercely burst out. Apparently, what Zhuyu showed was the boundless heaven sword art, one of the four sword arts of the Tianyuan Sword Sect. With a raging chop, his long sword displayed a tremendous power. Haha, that's a joke. Su Bao grinned and then clenched his big hand, generating a terrifying spiritual power in his palm. In the next moment, a straightforward fist struck out. It seemed like a giant elephant was dashing toward them. The fist struck the long sword, making the sword and its blade bend. Then Su Bao's powerful fist continued moving towards Zhuyu. What? Zhuyu was shocked. He did not expect that the move he earnestly studied would be brushed aside so easily. The fist struck Zhuyu. Puff. A large mouthful of blood immediately ejected from Zhu Yu's mouth as his body was launched backward. Zhu Yu? Meng Yu was shocked. A straightforward sword shadow instantly pierced toward Su Bao's throat cunningly. Good. With a brilliant smile, Su Bao took a large step and clenched his right fist. A frightening power ran through his burly arm, spurting out. An overwhelming fist with a stronger power. Bang. The same scene happened again. A great amount of blood ejected from Meng Yu's mouth, and in the process of his retreat, he bumped the bench beside him. Due to the horrible impact, one of the benches was thrown by the incredible force. Coincidentally, the direction in which this bench was thrown was precisely where the black-robed swordsman sat. Detecting the bench that was flying towards him, the black-robed swordsman immediately waved his hand, radiating enough spiritual power to break it into pieces. I just want to drink quietly. But you are bothering me. The cold voice of the black-robed swordsman abruptly sounded in the inn. Everyone present quickly looked toward black-robed swordsman while frowning. The news that Sword Marquis Mansion would compete with the Fierce Beast Gang in Celestial Immortal Residence today had spread long ago. Thus, no guests would come to Celestial Immortal Residence today. But the black-robed swordsman had stayed here all the day. When the two groups of people arrived there just now, they also noticed the black-robed swordsman, but they didn't care about him. But now, this guy, Jian Ming'er slightly frowned. The moment she saw the figure of the black-robed swordsman, she felt very familiar as if they were an acquaintance, but she couldn't tell why. Actually, she should be familiar with him. Because the real identity of the black-robed swordsman was Jian Wushuang, who had given her nightmares many times over these last 3 years. Jian Wushuang simply pulled his bamboo hat down so that nobody could see his appearance. I'm talking to you. Jian Wushuang's voice sounded again. You have bothered me. What should you do? Hearing these words, all the people from Sword Marquis Mansion were stunned. Unlike them, Su Bao yelled directly, "You reckless bastard, get out!" When yelling at Jian Wushuang, Su Bao reached toward him with his big hand at the same time. It seemed that Su Bao was going to grab Jian Wushuang's throat and throw him directly from the window. But the instant Su Bao approached Jian Wushuang, whoosh! A fierce sword light swept by. Incredibly fast. The flash vanished immediately. Nobody was able to see the orbit of the sword light clearly. What they just saw was a fleeting sword light. Jian Wushuang was still drinking at the table and deliberately swirled the wine in his glass. However, Su Bao, who was originally going to grab Jian Wushuang's throat, was suddenly stiff. What happened? Why is that guy standing still? Zhu Yu said, feeling a little stunned. Shut up, Jian Ming'er said angrily. Zhu Yu was startled by this. Dead. Su Bao is dead. Jian Xinhong said with astonished eyes, can't you see the blood leaking from Su Bao's neck? He was killed in just one move. What? Meng Yu, Zhu Yu and those warriors from Sword Marquis Mansion were all shocked. Yes, there is blood stain. His aura began to dissipate. Is he really dead? Everyone was stunned. It should be known that it was Su Bao who attacked Meng Yu and Zhu Yu with successive fists, and caused them serious wounds which showed his strength. However, he was killed by only one move in an instant. Plop. Eventually the corpse of Su Bao fell down weakly. Third brother? A heart-rending and shrill growl sounded. It shocked the Sword Marquis Mansion, but it riled up the Fierce Beast Gang. Su Long and Su Hu were startled and angry in particular. They stared at Jian Wushuang in rage with an amazing killing intent. You killed my third brother, so I will take your life. Su Long immediately became furious. The husky figure violently rushed forward while releasing an aura as fearsome as a huge beast, which instantly overwhelmed the audience. As soon as they detected the aura, both Meng Yu and Zhu Yu instantly turned pale. Before that, they thought they were able to compete with Su Long, or maybe even defeat and kill him if all three of them worked together. But now they realized how absurd and naive they were. Su Long didn't attack them at all. The mere release of his aura was enough to instantly frighten them, causing them to lose the courage required to fight against him. Too strong. Is that the strength of an expert on the earthly dragon list? Meng Yu and Zhu Yu gaped as they saw what was happening. Jian Ming'er also stared with a solemn face. The moment Su Long rushed forward, a sword light flashed again. The sword light was beautiful and charming, as if intoxicating. The sword light was gliding. It seemed to be moving very slowly, but it was magnified in the depths of Su Long's eyes. A hint of fear rose in Su Long's eyes, then that sword light glided through his chest. While wearing the bamboo hat and hiding his face as much as possible, Jian Wushuang had already appeared behind Su Long with some blood dripping from the edge of his triple kill sword. Su Long's figure became stiff with his fearsome aura completely vanishing in an instant. Then he turned his head dully and slowly spoke in broken words, "You, who are you?" Just then plop. Su Long fell down directly. Jian Wushuang pulled his bamboo hat down and glanced at the second oldest Su who, the only existing one of the three Su brothers. "Both your elder brother and young brother died. Now it's your turn." As soon as his voice fell, a beautiful sword light flashed once again. Su who stared with round eyes, falling down the next moment. Chapter 133 Jian Wushuang? Chapter 133, Jian Wushuang? Silence. The entire restaurant was so silent that you could hear a pin drop. Well, everyone from Sword Marquee Mansion and the Fierce Beast Gang who were still alive were all stunned. Were the well-known three Su brothers of Tianyan Province dead? The third oldest Su Bao was the first one to take action, defeating Mengyu and Zhuyu while seriously wounding them with 2 consecutive punches. However, he was also the first one to die, being killed in just 1 move. Next, the boss Su Long attacked by himself. As he was ranked on the Earthly Dragon list, the instantaneous release of his aura frightened everyone present. However, he was also killed in a single move. As for the second oldest, Su who, he hadn't even taken action before, was killed in 1 move. The 3 Su brothers were defeated in only 3 moves. 1 for each of them. There was no room for struggling. What kind of strength was it? Horrifying. Terrifying. Everyone looked at the black-robed swordsman in alarm. It was this black-robed swordsman that killed the 3 Su brothers within a moment. Dang. 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 The black-robed swordsman walked towards the direction where people from the Sword Marquee Mansion were gathered. At that moment, everyone from Sword Marquee Mansion held their breath. Both Mengyu and Zhuyu cleared their throats and trembled slightly. Everyone understood that the black-robed swordsman, who was able to kill the 3 Su brothers easily, was also able to kill anyone here easily. The black-robed swordsman walked slowly, but he didn't intend to attack anyone. He walked towards the stairs and just happened to pass by Jian Meng'er. There was also a hint of fear in her heart. When the black-robed swordsman passed by and didn't continue to attack, she felt relieved. But then she noticed the long sword he carried. Ah, what's that? Jian Meng'er's pupil suddenly shrank. She had practiced with that long sword for 2 months, so she was quite familiar with it. The triple kill sword, it's the triple kill sword. Jian Meng'er recognized it immediately, then she shouted, "Jian Wushuang, you are Jian Wushuang." The black-robed swordsman who was going downstairs stopped abruptly, but it was only for an instant, then he continued to walk downstairs. "Jian Wushuang," Jian Meng'er shouted with her hands clenching. "Meng'er, what the hell are you talking about?" Jian Xinhong shouted abruptly, "Jian Wushuang died 3 years ago, how could he be here?" "Mansion Master?" Jian Meng'er looked at Jian Xinhong astonishedly. However, Jian Xinhong winked at her. Jian Meng'er frowned and then recovered herself, saying immediately, "Maybe." "You must be wrong," Jian Xinhong shouted in a low voice. "Clean up the corpses of the 3 Su brothers. As long as they are dead, we don't need to worry about the Fierce Beast Gang. As for you," Jian Xinhong coldly looked towards the warriors of the Fierce Beast Gang who were still alive. "Mansion Master, please have mercy. We will disband the Fierce Beast Gang immediately. Mansion Master, we beg of you, please have mercy." These warriors who just reached the initial Gold Core realm immediately begged for mercy. "It's ridiculous to beg me for mercy," said Jian Xinhong, then he sneered and followed with a direct attack. After a few moments, all of the warriors were immediately killed. Afterward, the people from Sword Marquee Mansion began to clean up the corpses. At that time Jian Xinhong pulled Jian Meng'er aside and asked her in a low voice, "Meng'er, are you sure that the black-robed swordsman you saw just now was Jian Wushuang? His face was hidden under the bamboo hat, so I wasn't able to see it clearly." Jian Meng'er shook her head and continued speaking, "But I recognized the sword he carried. It was the same triple kill sword that I practiced with for 2 months. What's more, I could feel a hint of familiarity from the figure of the black-robed swordsman. Thus, I'm quite sure that he is Jian Wushuang." "He is definitely Jian Wushuang. The triple kill sword and his figure are the evidence. Jian Wushuang always has the triple kill sword. And you felt his figure was familiar. Besides, he also helped us end this disaster by killing the 3 Su brothers. Jian Xinhong smiled and said, "This guy who disappeared for 3 years has finally come back. But how was he able to acquire such great strength?" Jian Ming'er looked a bit unnatural. How could he be so strong? An expert like Su Long, who was ranked on the earthly dragon list, was also killed by Jian Wushuang with only one move. Only one move. How could his strength be so incredible? Even her senior brother Ling Feng, whom she considered as her Mr. Right, was unlikely to kill Su Long in a single move. She came back with confidence, prepared to compete with Jian Wushuang and erase the humiliation she suffered 3 years ago. However, the gap between them became wider and wider, which made her almost desperate. It now appeared that was a joke. That bastard, how did he make such great progress? It was hard for Jian Ming'er to accept the facts, but her only choice was to believe it. Jian Wushuang left Celestial Immortal Residence and walked out into the street. But he couldn't help glancing backward at the Celestial Immortal Residence, shaking his head secretly. Although I deliberately hid my face and even changed the voice, Jian Ming'er was still able to recognize me. It was because of the triple kill sword that she was able to recognize me. Jian Wushuang could do nothing about this. However, even though he was recognized, he didn't intend to stay behind and chat with them. If he went back to Sword Marquee Mansion with his true identity, it would be a disaster for Sword Marquee Mansion. Just like what happened 3 years ago, or even worse. Anyway, Sword Marquee Mansion is in good condition and the Sword Pavilion is still there. So it's fine. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. Just now, he noticed that there were some experts following Jian Xinhong from Sword Marquee Mansion. Because they had the marks of Sword Pavilion on their clothes, it proved that the Sword Pavilion still existed in Sword Marquee Mansion. Jian Wushuang stayed there for another day. He didn't feel relieved until after the 3 Su brothers were dead and the whole Fierce Beast gang was completely torn apart by Sword Marquee Mansion. After that, he went to the Gladiator Arena to visit Bai Chong. Jian Wushuang was thankful to Bai Chong. Not only did Bai Chong help him when he was young, Bai Chong also helped hold back the assassins, with a group of experts from the Gladiator Arena, when he was being chased by Blood Feather Tower 3 years ago. Anyway, Jian Wushuang owed him a lot. However, it was a pity Jian Wushuang was unable to meet Bai Chong at the Gladiator Arena. It was said that Bai Chong left Bahui Commandery 3 years ago, and no one knew where he was. Jian Wushuang could also do nothing about this. He also left it that night. After resting assured about Sword Marquee Mansion, he was going to get his revenge on Blood Feather Tower. The day I return is the day all you demons die. Now he was back. Chapter 134 Clearwater Stronghold. Chapter 134 Clearwater Stronghold. In one of the Golden Dragon subsidiary palaces in Tianyin Province, Jian Wushuang, still dressed in black and wearing a bamboo hat, directly came to the counter and took out his token from Dragon Palace. "Sir, come with me please." After the blue-haired woman at the front counter saw the token, she immediately led Jian Wushuang into a private room. "Give me all the files on Blood Feather Tower within my access permission, including strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianyin Province, the number of experts and the strength of those strongholds, etc. Besides that, give me a copy of the Earthly Dragon List as well," Jian Wushuang said. The Earthly Dragon List would be renewed every once in a while. Since 2 years had passed, the list should have changed a lot. "Yes, sir," the blue-haired woman nodded and said. Soon she gave Jian Wushuang a lot of files. Jian Wushuang read them carefully. "Oh, it is as I expected. Blood Feather Tower did suffer a desperate revenge after the battle on Quiet Moon Lake." Jian Wushuang smiled slightly when he saw the information about the battle. When Dragon Palace heard of his death, the 2 palace masters of Dragon Palace along with many top experts retaliated against Blood Feather Tower in a full-scale attack. Many strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianzong Dynasty suffered a bloodbath and lots of experts were killed, which was one of the few setbacks Blood Feather Tower had gone through. But it just lasted for 2 months and suddenly died down. Blood Feather Tower had undoubtedly been in danger and was about to be destroyed, but why did everything suddenly die down? Jian Wushuang didn't understand. If there was no particular reason, they would not have stopped so easily. It seems that the background of Blood Feather Tower is not as simple as it seems, Jian Wushuang thought. Then he looked at another file. It was about the distribution of strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianyin Province and their strength. It said that the strength of Blood Feather Tower is much weaker because of the bloodbath 2 years ago. Now they behaved more carefully than before, and their strongholds are located at easier to conceal places. Even Golden Dragon Palace could only locate 3 strongholds of Blood Feather Tower in Tianyin Province. It astonished Jian Wushuang. It should be known that Tianyin Province was an important place for Blood Feather Tower. However, there were as many as 108 commanderies in Tianyin Province. How could they run it well with only 3 strongholds? They need at least a dozen. But their strongholds were secluded. Even as the best at collecting information in Qinzong Dynasty, Golden Dragon Palace could only locate 3 of their strongholds. Among the 3, 2 of them were small. Only the last one was an important one. Clearwater Stronghold? Jian Wushuang squinted. Clearwater Stronghold, located in Clearwater Commandery of Tianyin Province. There were a lot of copper-masked and silver-masked assassins, as well as many golden-masked assassins. Most importantly, there were 2 purple-masked assassins and an intelligence director in it. While in those 2 small strongholds, there were only a couple of golden-masked assassins, Jian Wushuang was not interested in them at all. Blood Feather Tower has established a well-defined intelligence system. Once I take action, Blood Feather Tower will notice immediately. It's impossible to get a second chance. Therefore, the action must be fast, relentless, and bring a great loss. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. Losing some gold-masked assassins was nothing to Blood Feather Tower, who was one of the 3 hegemons in Qinzong Dynasty. They would not care. However, it would be different if they lost some purple-masked assassins. Especially in the battle 2 years ago, Blood Feather Tower had paid a huge price, which made purple-masked assassins even more important. If Jian Wushuang could kill several purple-masked assassins this time, it would definitely be a big loss for Blood Feather Tower. These 2 purple-masked assassins are in the Yinyang Void Realm, but only the initial Yinyang Void Realm. They are about the same as the purple-masked assassin who was severely wounded. Even his right hand was disabled by me near Quiet Moon Lake 2 years ago. It's possible to kill them both, Jian Wushuang thought. An assassin's strength in the same realm could vary. Some were stronger and some were weaker. These 2 purple-masked assassins in Clearwater Stronghold were weaker ones. 2 years ago, Jian Wushuang severely hurt and almost killed a purple-masked assassin with his soul-devouring secret skill. Now, even without using it, he was quite sure that he could kill them with only his comprehension in sword essence. I will take Clearwater Stronghold, Jian Wushuang decided. Of course, the reason he targeted Clearwater Stronghold was not only because of those 2 purple-masked assassins, but also because of another man. He was the one who was in charge of the intelligence system there. His name was Aning. Jian Wushuang would never forget him. 3 years ago, some assassins from Blood Feather Tower chased him from Sword Marquee Mansion, and their leader was Aning. What's more, it was he who poisoned his aunt with the heart-biting poison, which had tortured his aunt for years. His aunt was caught by Aning at that time, and he didn't know how his aunt was doing now. Aning, you old bastard, Jian Wushuang's eyes were ice cold. Then he called the blue-haired woman and told her, prepare me a griffin and something special. A huge rift in Clearwater Commandery. It was a remote rift embosomed in hills. As usual, few people came here, not even to pass by. In the thick woods at the center of the rift, was a huge courtyard. It was Clearwater Stronghold, a quite important place for the top assassin organization in Qinzong Dynasty, Blood Feather Tower. On the top of a mountain in the rift, Jian Wushuang stood quietly, dressed in black and wearing a bamboo hat. Watching through the void, his cold eyes stared at the courtyard below. Blood Feather Tower has heavy security. To enter the stronghold, assassins of Blood Feather Tower have to signal one another, and the password alternates every day. Besides that, the killers are well trained. It is impossible to sneak in by getting the password from them. The only way to get in was, kill his way in. A stream of killing intent could be seen rising from his body. At this moment, thunder growled over the void and the sky became dark. Then a heavy rain began falling a second later. The rain fell on the ground and the earth got wet. It raining, palm outstretched, Jian Wushuang felt the rain slapping on the back of his hands. Since the weather is favoring me, let me enjoy slaughtering them in the heavy rain. Jian Wushuang changed into a straw rain cape. Then he grabbed his sword and directly walked toward the huge courtyard in the center of the rift. Chapter 135, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 1. Chapter 135, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 1. The heavy rain relentlessly poured onto the ground. At the center of a rift, there was a large courtyard consisting of an inner court and an outer court. Under the roof of the outer court, many figures in black robes were standing or sitting on the ground. All of them wore masks, in which most of them were copper masks. There was only a small number of silver masks and 4 gold masks. There was no sound in the outer court except for the rain. Even the assassins of Bloodfeather Tower that gathered there remained quiet. While behind the gate, right in the front of the courtyard, a silver-masked assassin was standing with folded arms. He raised his head and looked up at the dim void. "When will the rain stop?" the silver-masked assassin murmured. Suddenly, boom. The door behind him was blown open and flew straight ahead. What the hell? The silver-masked assassin standing behind the door was the first to be attacked. It was because he was so close to the door that he couldn't get away from it when it came flying at him. Bang! The big and heavy door hit him, which heavily injured him. He instantly spat out blood as he flew back, landing in the center of the courtyard. What? The whole courtyard stirred. The assassins of Bloodfeather Tower stood up as they all looked toward the gate. A figure, wearing a bamboo hat and straw rain cape, stood at the door with a long sword on his back. Seeing him, all the assassins' breath turned cold. "Who is it?" an assassin shouted. Jianghu ignored him. He walked slowly to the courtyard, one step at a time. Each step was firm and steady as if it contained magic power. Buzz. The raindrops gathered on the ground and rippled. The waves changed constantly, which made the assassins of Bloodfeather Tower feel like the world was disappearing. They could only see the changing waves, the slowly walking Jianghu, and the powerful sword essence radiating from him. What's that? What kind of trick is this? All of them were astonished. They didn't know that it was just an extreme use of the sword essence of Waterdrop. Suddenly, Jianghu stopped and slightly raised his head, showing a bright and handsome face under the bamboo hat. However, his face was cold and his dark eyes were full of killing intent, as if a sharp weapon was aiming towards them. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Jianghu swiftly arrived in front of the dozens of killers who were closest to him. Ice-cold sword light flashed at once. At first sight, the sword light was more like a single drop of heavy rain. What's this? Water drop. Such a big water drop. Some of the weaker assassins didn't even react. Be careful. Get out of the way. The assassins who had reacted shouted at them. But it was already too late. Cold sword light flashed and swept past their throats, regardless of whether they were copper-masked assassins or silver-masked assassins. A total of 13 assassins, among whom 8 were copper-masked assassins and 5 were silver-masked assassins, were killed in a split second. Then Jianghu swiftly moved again. The cold water drops swept to 5 nearby assassins. 5 sword edges hit 5 killers at the same time, instantly killing them. At this point they finally realized what was happening. Damn it! Kill him. Kill? There were nearly 100 assassins in the outer courtyard. Though Jianghu had killed 18 in one breath, there were still many assassins coming to kill Jianghu. Among the approaching crowd, the strongest, the 4 gold-masked assassins were at the front. Gold-masked assassins were experts in the exceptional gold core realm. At this moment, the 4 gold-masked assassins closed in on him simultaneously. However, a fierce wind suddenly blew and those falling raindrops swept over the 4 gold-masked assassins. All of their eyes were filled with terror, then they all fell at the same time. The strongest, the 4 gold-masked assassins, were killed by one movement of his sword. How can this be possible? How could 4 gold-masked assassins be killed with a single move? What's with this strength? Out of the assassins who were still alive in the area, a lot of silver-masked and copper-masked assassins looked at this in shock. Gold-masked assassins? Jianghu would not spare a glance at them. He could already kill a gold-masked assassin in one move 2 years ago. Now his strength was much better than 2 years ago, so he could obviously kill several gold-masked assassins with a single move now. Next, it is your turn. Jianghu looked around at those silver-masked and copper-masked assassins. The killing intent in his eyes was more intense. Everyone belonging to Bloodfeather Tower has to die. Jianghu moved again. The terrifying water drops in the heavy rain could not be seen clearly, and they easily swept over those assassins. A massacre. A total massacre. Even the 4 strongest gold-masked assassins were killed. The remaining silver-masked and copper-masked assassins had no chance to even defend. While Jian Wushuang was massacring everyone in the outer courtyard, dozens of figures gathered inside a room of the inner courtyard. There were 8 gold-masked assassins and 2 purple-masked assassins. Besides them, there was a purple-robed person who didn't wear a mask, but his status was no lower than the purple-masked assassins. It was an Ing. This time our target is her. An Ing opened a scroll. Detailed information on an expert was written on it. One of the upper elders in Tianyuan sword sect, Gu Qinghan. And Ying's voice was cold as he continued, "The mole we put in Tianyuan sword sect has a high position now, and it is possible for him to take charge of the Tianyuan sword sect as the new head of the Tianyuan sword sect. However, Gu Qinghan has always gone against him these years. So, she has to die." Hearing that, the gold-masked assassins and 2 purple-masked assassins didn't change their expressions. Upper elders of Tianyuan sword sect, though they were supreme experts of the Yin-Yang Void Realm, it was not difficult to kill them silently. There are many experts in the Tianyuan sword sect, several of them have even reached the Yin-Yang Void Realm. It's impossible to kill her in the Tianyuan sword sect, so we have to wait until she comes out of the Tianyuan sword sect. An Ing and the 2 purple-masked assassins were discussing how to secretly kill Gu Qinghan. However, suddenly, they sensed a strong wave of spiritual power and heard many death howls from the outer courtyard. Chapter 136, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 2. Chapter 136, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 2. What happened? An Ing asked and frowned. There are enemies attacking, a purple-masked assassin yelled coldly. The door immediately opened, then An Ing and others came out of the room. As soon as they walked out, they saw a ghostly figure in the outer courtyard that was several hundred meters away. The figure swept through in succession, with a strong sword light and many streaks of sword light flashing. Each streak of sword light had the blood of assassins from Blood Feather Tower on it. "There, hurry up!" A purple-masked assassin violently shouted, and then immediately rushed into the outer courtyard. It was only a few hundred meters, so it only took an instant to arrive at their speed. But in just that instant, the assassins in the outer courtyard had already suffered a massacre. When An Ing and others arrived in the outer courtyard, Jian Wushuang was piercing the chest of the last silver-masked assassin with his long sword. Plop. With the falling down of the silver-masked assassin's corpse, only Jian Wushuang remained standing in the outer courtyard. An Ing and the others were stunned. Even though they were all top assassins, they were stunned when they came into the outer courtyard and saw this scene. There were a lot of corpses spread out on the ground in the outer courtyard and in the corridor under the eaves. All these corpses were strewn about, and the whole courtyard was buried in corpses, while the blood rushing from their wounds had already dyed the whole courtyard scarlet. It was still raining heavily, and the vacant land in the central courtyard was waterlogged. But at the moment that water was so scarlet. At first sight it was like a demonic scene from hell. Wearing a bamboo hat and a straw rain cape, Jian Wushuang stood in the very center of this demonic hell with the triple kill sword in his hands. He was like a powerful demon fighting his way out of hell. No matter whether it was An Ing, those 2 purple-masked assassins, or the 8 gold-masked assassins, all of them were shocked by this scene. What shocked them was not that Jian Wushuang killed all these people, but the time that Jian Wushuang spent killing them. As soon as Jian Wushuang started this slaughter, they became aware of it in the inner courtyard and immediately rushed here. From the inner courtyard to the outer courtyard was only a few hundred meters. They arrived in the turn of a hand, at most a dozen breaths of time in total. In such a short time, Jian Wushuang killed all the assassins in the courtyard, nearly 100 assassins. How could he be so fast? How strong is he? The 2 purple-masked assassins in the courtyard asked themselves in their heart whether they could kill all the assassins in the outer court in such a short time if they tried their best. The answer was, no, it's impossible. But Jian Wushuang did it. The most important thing was, judging from the spiritual power radiating from Jian Wushuang, he was only in the profound gold core realm. A person in the profound gold core realm can kill nearly 100 Blood Feather Tower assassins in such a short time. An Ing watched Jian Wushuang with a strong killing intent on his face and coldly shouted, "Who are you?" The 2 purple-masked assassins and 8 gold-masked assassins also intensely stared at Jian Wushuang. 2 years ago, in front of a lot of people, I once said. The face of Jian Wushuang was still hidden under the bamboo hat, but his indifferent voice spread throughout the area. "The day I return is the day all you guys die. You should have heard that." Ning was stunned and there was a hint of terror in his eyes. At this moment, Jian Wushuang also lifted his head slightly and exposed his handsome face. Seeing that face, even though Ning was very calm, he could not help screaming at this moment. "Jian Wushuang, it is you." "Who?" "Jian Wushuang. The target of the Scarlet Kill command." The 2 purple-masked assassins and 8 gold-masked assassins were also stunned. "Jian Wushuang. The guy turned the whole Tianzong dynasty upside down 2 years ago. And Blood Feather Tower was almost completely wiped out because of him. Aren't you dead?" Ning looked at Jian Wushuang with astonishment and said, "How could you possibly be alive? So many people saw you jump into the abyss. You should definitely be dead?" Ning thought it was incredible. Those 2 purple-masked assassins were also stunned. They all heard of the abyss, which was one of the death traps in the Tianzong dynasty. What was underneath the abyss was still a big mystery because no one came back from the abyss after entering it. So hearing that Jian Wushuang had jumped into the abyss, everyone believed he was dead. Blood Feather Tower also thought so, and that's why they had stopped chasing Jian Wushuang 2 years ago. But now Jian Wushuang appeared in front of them in perfect condition after jumping into the abyss. How is this possible? Sorry I beat the rap. When I was passing through the gates of hell, the king of hell said I was so handsome that it would be a pity if I died at such a young age, so he sent me back. Since I am not dead, it's your turn. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly with a slightly upward smirk, but his smile was like a blade. Laughingstock, one of the purple-masked assassins commented, then directly smirked. There was an opportunity for you to live, but you sought death. Since you did not die 2 years ago, we just have to kill you today. As soon as his voice fell, the aura of the Yin-Yang Void Realm on that purple-masked assassin suddenly soared. He turned into a streak of flowing light at this moment and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang in a flash. Go to hell. A purple soft sword appeared without any omen like a ghost. Ning and the rest of the assassins watched this scene coldly. Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked at the purple soft sword slowly moving toward him, but the corner of his mouth showed a faint smile. A purple-masked assassin. 2 years ago, when facing a purple-masked assassin, I had to use the soul-devouring secret skill out of desperation, but now... Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold, and the triple-kill sword suddenly thrust out at this moment. An eruption of the terrifying fiery wind sword essence on the sword edge tore everything and burned everything. What? The purple-masked assassin was shocked. Not good, the other purple-masked assassin exclaimed, immediately following to join the battle. 2 people? So what? Jian Wushuang still did not care at all. With the combination of the wind sword essence and fire sword essence, the extreme violent sword in his hands directly smashed forward. The 2 purple-masked assassins joined hands, in an attempt to resist the sword. However, Jian Wushuang waved his hand suddenly and then the sword struck 3 times consecutively. All 3 streaks of sword light contained fiery wind sword essence. This was the combination of 2 sword essences. The power would be much stronger than only 1 sword essence. Damn it. The 2 purple-masked assassins shuddered inside and resisted with haste. But after striving to resist Jian Wushuang's 3 sword strikes, both of them were directly slammed backward. It's time. Suddenly, a light flickered in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The triple-kill sword became a streak of flowing light again, and then rushed forward. Selfless sword technique, idealistic form. His full strength suddenly erupted. Chapter 137, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 3. Chapter 137, Attacking and Killing in the Heavy Rain, Part 3. An incomparably terrifying sword light directly burst out. Even the 2 purple-masked assassins could not help but shudder secretly when they sensed the frightening power embedded in the sword light. Both of them were still retreating swiftly to escape the previous 3 sword moves from Jian Wushuang. The one who was targeted by the bursting sword light only had time to brandish his purple soft sword, trying to deflect the sword light. Boom. The terrifying sword light released an incredibly shocking power, knocking the purple soft sword away, and then using the undiminished remnant power of the sword light to strike the purple-masked assassin's body. In an instant, a big round bloody hole with a diameter of more than 1 centimeter appeared on the body of the purple-masked assassin. The bloody hole pierced his body, shredding and smashing any organs and flesh it passed by. The purple-masked assassin's eyes widened while blood poured wildly from his mouth. Then his body fell down backwards. The first purple-masked assassin was dead. What? The other living purple-masked assassin was shocked by the scene. His heart suddenly thumped as Jian Wushuang's cold eyes looked over towards him. Run! The imposing purple-masked assassin, a peak expert in the Yin-Yang Void realm, did not hesitate to fly up into the sky. Not until he reached the void over 10 meters above Jian Wushuang did he dare to stop and glance at him in terror. Terrifying. His sword skill is too terrifying. Fiery Wind Sword Essence. Yes, he has already combined the sword essences of Gale and Raging Fire into the Fiery Wind Sword Essence. His comprehension of the sword essence is much better than mine. 2-on-1 Old Nine and I were still defeated by him, and Old Nine was even killed in one attack. His strength is far beyond the common initial Yin Void realm. He might even be able to rival experts in the profound Yin Void realm. The purple-masked assassin murmured. Void walking. Jian Wushuang frowned when the purple-masked assassin fled into the air. Warriors in the Yin-Yang Void realm were able to void walk, so Jian Wushuang could not stop him if the former wanted to escape. Though the purple-masked assassin was out of his reach, Aning and the other gold-masked assassins who were not able to void walk were still on the ground. He fought with 2 purple-masked assassins and even killed one of them. How could that be possible? Aning felt it was unbelievable as he looked at the dead body of that purple-masked assassin. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang looked over at him. Aning was frightened out of his senses. Quick, kill him, go and kill him. Aning roared. The 8 gold-masked assassins beside him froze for a moment, then immediately rushed out. Assassins of Blood Feather Tower were all well trained. Even if the order from their superiors was to get themselves killed, they would not hesitate to obey. While the gold-masked assassins rushed forward, Aning fled in another direction, yelling at the purple-masked assassin in the air, Come and save me. That purple-masked assassin began to approach once he heard him. You want to escape? Jian Wushuang shot a glance at Aning and snorted. All the other assassins in the Clearwater stronghold didn't have to die. He wouldn't mind even if the 2 purple-masked assassins stayed alive. But he would not let Aning escape, never. Get out of my way. Jian Wushuang cried out, followed by another flash of sword light. An utterly light and graceful sword move danced through the heavy rain and then swept across the throats of the 8 gold-masked assassins. The 8 gold-masked assassins were all killed in an instant. Do you think you can escape? After killing the 8 gold-masked assassins with just one move from the formless sword art, Jian Wushuang dashed out immediately, and appeared behind Aning in the blink of an eye. How could he be so fast? Aning turned pale with fright. Realizing that the purple-masked assassin couldn't escape with him into the air before Jian Wushuang could catch him, his face became grim and madness arose in his eyes. Bastard! Go to hell! Aning turned around with a rush, hurling a coldly glaring knife right toward the space between his eyebrows. The knife was incredibly fast and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang in a flash. Ridiculous. Jian Wushuang sneered as he slid past the knife with a ghost-like movement, then swung his sword across Anying's wrist. Anying's entire hand was chopped off. Ah! Anying howled with great pain, while Jian Wushuang had already appeared in front of him. A brutal power was condensed in Jian Wushuang's palm, which was then clenched into a fist and launched into Anying's abdomen. Puff! Anying spewed a large mouthful of blood, and his complexion instantly became pale again. My gold core, my gold core. Although Anying was also an expert in the exceptional gold core realm, he did not even have a chance of resisting when Jian Wushuang destroyed his gold core. The gold core was the source of spiritual power for warriors. Since it was destroyed, the decades of earnest cultivation that Anying endured instantly crumbled to dust. You'll be dead soon. Why care about your gold core? Jian Wushuang laughed scornfully. He reached out with his hand and gripped Anying's neck, raising Anying's body up into the air as if gripping a chicken, and then slammed it down fiercely onto the ground. Bang! Even with the buffer of the gathered water from the rain, the blow cracked the ground below. Anying once again madly squirted blood from the severe damage to his organs. Then he passed out from the intense pain. The next moment Jian Wushuang lifted Anying's body, looking up towards the purple-masked assassin in the air. An unparalleled hint of fear emerged in the purple-masked assassin's eyes, so he did not dare to come down and fight with Jian Wushuang, not even for an ing. Purple-masked assassins? Just SOSO. Ignoring the purple-masked assassin, Jian Wushuang grinned and quickly dragged an ing out of the courtyard. Soon he disappeared from the purple-masked assassin's sight. The purple-masked assassin stood alone in the air, gazing at the sea of blood down on the ground. As the only survivor in the stronghold, he could not help being speechless. This massacre brought a great loss to Blood Feather Tower. More than 100 copper-masked and silver-masked assassins in the entire Clearwater stronghold were slain to the last man. The 12 gold-masked assassins all died in the carnage too. Of course, these losses were nothing compared to the death of that purple-masked assassin and an ing being caught. I had no idea that Jian Wushuang, who fell into the abyss 2 years ago, would still be alive and have improved his strength so much in such a short period. The purple-masked assassin clasped his hands. Since he is alive, Blood Feather Tower will be in some real trouble. Chapter 138, The Leech. Chapter 138, The Leech. Jian Wushuang dragged an ing into a cave. Bang. Jian Wushuang tossed him and his body hit the ground. An ing immediately came out of the coma because of the pain. As soon as he woke up, he burst out, howling because of the pain. Jian Wushuang walked to an ing with a light golden elixir in one of his hands. This elixir is worth 200 points in the secret pavilion of Dragon Palace. Now it's a favor to you. Waving his hand, Jian Wushuang made an ing swallow it. It was a panacea in secret pavilion of Dragon Palace. After taking it, an ing would not die anytime soon. Tell me, where are my father and aunt? Jian Wushuang asked. His father and his aunt, whom he cared about most, were taken away by Blood Feather Tower. An ing remained alive till now because Jian Wushuang needed his help to find his father and aunt. Your father? I don't know, An ing answered and shook his head. Squinting his eyes, Jian Wushuang was not surprised. His father was the first one who awakened his sword soul. Blood Feather Tower had sent lots of experts and slaughtered the whole Ji clan in order to catch him. In the eyes of Blood Feather Tower, his father was much more important than his aunt. Therefore his father should be locked up in an even more secretive place. As for your aunt, you mean Ji Wuyu, right? I caught her 3 years ago and I do know where she is now. But do you think I will tell you? Said An ing, looking at Jian Wushuang with a sneer. I know you will not easily tell me, so I prepared something for you. Having said that, Jian Wushuang turned his hand over, revealing a light yellow worm egg. It seemed that it was going to hatch a baby worm. An ing, I heard that you are good with poison. Since the heart-biting poison in my aunt's body was from you, you must know what this is in my hand, right? Jian Wushuang said. Seeing that light yellow worm egg in Jian Wushuang's hand, An ing changed his facial expression immediately and shouted, A leech! You are right, Jian Wushuang replied with a slight smile. Then he quickly shoved it in An Ying's mouth without giving him a chance to speak. An ing struggled violently, but it didn't work at all since his dantian had been disabled. After swallowing the light yellow worm egg, his face turned red and he desperately tried to vomit. However, the leech egg had already melted in his body. The leech lives in the blood. Once it enters your body, it will immediately hatch, then begin sucking your blood. The first leech will turn into 2, then 2 turn to 4, and in the end it will hatch thousands of leeches. They will swallow your blood bite by bite, then your flesh. Your body will be totally swallowed in several days. That's the real body devouring by 10,000 worms. Speaking of the pain, my aunt who was struck by your heart-biting poison should be suffering more than you. Hearing Jian Wushuang's cold voice, An Ying's face was suddenly pale. Both the leech and heart-biting poison were ways of torturing people. The leech was more horrible with regards to the pain, while heart-biting poison was crueler. After all, heart-biting poison worked in the body step by step. It might last for years or even decades. It not only tortured the physical body but also the mind. While the leech worked faster and more fiercely, only lasting 1 to 2 days for death to occur. Before Jian Wushuang decided to attack the stronghold, he asked the woman who was in charge of Golden Dragon Subsidiary Palace to prepare him a leech egg. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Damn it. An Ying's face was still red and distorted. Apparently, the leech in his body had started swallowing his flesh and blood. The pain was strong and it didn't take long for the leech to reproduce. 1 turned into 2 and 2 turned into 4. The pain he was suffering was increased by several times. Ah! A sharp pain he had never suffered before spread through his body, so painful that Aning could not stand it. So he raised his left hand and tried to hit his head. However, Jian Wushuang stood beside him staring at him. When he saw Aning trying to hit his head with his left hand, a sword light flashed and Aning's left hand was instantly cut off, falling to the ground. After which, Jian Wushuang slapped him in the face. It was a slap effectively controlled by spiritual power. Immediately Aning spit out a mouthful of blood containing pieces of his teeth. Jian Wushuang had slapped him and destroyed all his teeth in case he tried to commit suicide by biting off his own tongue. Don't even dream about dying with me here these 2 days. Enjoy it. Jian Wushuang smiled and sat down leisurely beside him, then he brought out a bottle of wine. He was just drinking. However, Aning lay sprawled out on the ground with his hands and feet waving, and his face was extremely distorted. Kill me. Please kill me. Aning desperately implored him. But he said it unclearly because all of his teeth were destroyed. Watching him coldly, Jian Wushuang did offer him any mercy. He knew clearly that the pain caused by the leech was nothing compared with the pain caused by the heart-biting poison in his aunt's body over the years. What's more, it was he who poisoned his aunt with heart-biting poison. Nearly half an hour later, the leech in Ying's body had turned into 8. The pain had already increased by 8 times. Ah! Aning roared crazily while suffering such great pain. He almost lost his mind. He couldn't bear the extreme suffering anymore. I'll tell you where Ji Wuiyue is. Aning growled and said. Then Jian Wushuang, who was drinking, turned over and looked at him. I will tell you. After that, please kill me. Aning roared. He didn't want to live anymore. He just wanted to die. However, he was not even able to kill himself since his hands were cut off and his teeth were knocked out. Tell me. Jian Wushuang didn't want to waste time. Ji Wuiyue, she was locked up by the Situ family, Aning said unclearly. Situ family? Which one? Jian Wushuang asked and frowned. The Situ family in Bahui Commandery. Situ Qingyue is their master. Ji Wuiyue is locked up in the mansion of the Situ family, Aning growled. Situ Qingyue? Jian Wushuang's facial expression suddenly changed. Situ Qingyue, he knew him and he also met him before. Chapter 139, It was still raining. Chapter 139, It was still raining. Born in the Sword Marquis Mansion, the acknowledged top hegemon in Bahui Commandery, Jian Wushuang was familiar with the big forces within the commandery. Situ family was one of the greatest families in Bahui Commandery, and Situ Qingyue the master was an expert at the Gold Core realm. After all, within such a small place like Bahui Commandery, an expert in the Gold Core realm could be seen as one of the strongest. Jian Wushuang had seen him before, at the Sword Marquis token battle 3 years ago when the great masters of all the forces were invited to come and watch. Situ Qingyue was one of the invitees. Situ Qingyue belongs to Blood Feather Tower? Jian Wushuang asked while coldly staring at Aning. Yes. He is one of us and he has a very special position in Blood Feather Tower. Although his strength is only at the Gold Core realm, his orders come directly from the Tower Master. Even I can't enjoy such treatment, Aning shouted in a low voice. Directly ordered by the Master of Blood Feather Tower? Jian Wushuang was shocked but he believed his words more or less. Anyway, Blood Feather Tower was desperate to kill him just because his sword soul had awoken. Common people knew nothing and had never even heard about Sword Soul. Neither had the assassins of Blood Feather Tower. Yet, as long as Situ Qingyue was directly ordered by the Tower Master, maybe he knew something about Sword Soul. As soon as he awoke the Sword Soul in that battle, Situ Qingyue must have immediately sensed it, and then notify Blood Feather Tower to hunt and kill him. I have said everything I should say. Kill me. Quickly kill me. Aning crazily roared. You want to die? It's not so easy. With a sneer, Jian Wushuang waved his sword with brilliant light, breaking the tendons in Ying's legs. Behave yourself and wait here for me. Don't worry, I had you swallow that elixir before feeding you the leech. That elixir is a panacea. You won't die. After saying that, Jian Wushuang walked away, leaving Ying crazily roaring in the cave. However, the cave was so deep that no one could hear his roar. Jian Wushuang mounted a griffin and directly flew towards Bahui Commandery. It was already dark when he arrived in Bahui Commandery, stopping in front of the Situ family mansion. Boom, above the void was rumbling thunder. The rain was still pouring. The rain hasn't stopped, so let the slaughter continue. Situ Mansion was brightly lit. As one of the biggest families within Bahui Commandery, the Situ family mansion was still very bustling even at night. Suddenly, bang. The Situ mansion gate was directly kicked open, as a thundering boom shook the air. Numerous warriors in the Situ family were disturbed and came out. Who is it? How dare you? You dare trespass into our Situ family? Numerous figures rushed out and quickly appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. The leader of them was Situ Qingyue. Master Situ, I haven't seen you for years. How are you? Jian Wushuang slowly walked towards Situ Qingyue while speaking. Meanwhile, he had lightly raised his head, showing his handsome face. Clearly seeing Jian Wushuang's face, Situ Qingyue opened his eyes widely and shouted, Jian Wushuang, it's you. Jian Wushuang. A commotion arose in the area. Evidently, all the warriors of the Situ family had heard about the exceptional genius from Sword Marquis Mansion, who had shocked the whole Bahui Commandery. Hee, as long as you still remember me, things will be easier. Answer me. Where is my aunt? Jian Wushuang coldly asked. Situ Qingyue was astonished. Naturally, he knew who his aunt was, but he pretended to be confused and asked, Who is your aunt? Still pretending? Jian Wushuang sneered and suddenly appeared in front of Situ Qingyue like a shadow. In the next instant, Situ Qingyue had been explosively knocked out, spouting blood as he flew backward. Bang! Situ Qingyue heavily fell upon a chair in the hall, which immediately exploded. Master! Those warriors of the Situ family were all scared and angry, but no one dared to move. Even Situ Qingyue in the Gold Core realm had been severely hurt without clearly seeing Jian Wushuang. If they stood out, it was just like seeking their doom. I will ask you again. Where is my aunt? If you still won't answer me today, I'll slaughter the whole Situ family, leaving no one alive. Jian Wushuang's voice was icy cold, with great killing intent. Situ Qingyue's throat tightened as he spoke. I'll take you there. Really pretending? Jian Wushuang said while coldly smiled. Then Situ Qingyue struggled to stand up, and led Jian Wushuang towards a secret chamber in the mansion. Quang. The door of Situ family's secret underground chamber immediately opened. It was a very dark chamber. As soon as Jian Wushuang entered, he saw a woman in a cage in the front of the chamber. Her hair was in a mess covering half of her face, while the other half was full of malignant tumors and scars, looking extremely ugly. The offensive odor from her body could be smelt even in the distance. Auntie. Jian Wushuang recognized this woman as soon as he saw her, and then he immediately rushed towards her. Just as Jian Wushuang started to move, next to him, a sparkle appeared in Situ Qingyue's eyes. Although the latter looked terribly pale and was covering his chest with one hand. Attack! Situ Qingyue shouted loudly. One black iron pillar after another suddenly rose from the ground on which Jian Wushuang just rushed past, forming a giant cage. In an instant, the whole secret chamber was covered, and Jian Wushuang was trapped within the cage. Haha! Seeing this scene, Situ Qingyue finally laughed out loudly. Jian Wushuang stopped his steps and could not help changing his face as he turned around and found the cage in front of him. Jian Wushuang, you must have never thought about it. Situ Qingyue stared at Jian Wushuang with a cold smile. When building this secret chamber, I had predicted that such a scene would happen one day, so I set up this trap from the beginning. The surrounding walls of this secret chamber are made of black steel with a thickness of over 3 meters. No one could break through them. As for the iron pillars in front of you, they are forged with raven gold. Except supreme experts in the Yinyang Void realm, no one can. Before he finished his words, Situ Qingyue suddenly became stunned. As Jian Wushuang abruptly waved his hand, a sharp and brilliant sword light suddenly burst out. Although the iron pillars were made by raven gold and incomparably hard, they were instantly broken into pieces as soon as the sword light touched them. Whoosh! A figure unexpectedly appeared beside Situ Qingyue. You! Situ Qingyue opened his eyes widely, staring at Jian Wushuang in front of him. I planned to let you live a little longer, but now it's unnecessary. Jian Wushuang's icy voice rang in his ears, and then a sword light burst out. Shua! Situ Qingyue's head was completely separated from his body. Chapter 140 Death. Chapter 140, Death. Situ Qingyue's head flew high into the air with his eyes wide in disbelief. He didn't know. Although Jian Wushuang was only in the profound gold core realm, his real strength was much more terrifying. In Clearwater Stronghold, he fought with 2 purple-masked assassins at the same time and killed one directly. Although he was not in the Yinyang Void realm, he was more powerful than a normal warrior in that realm. How could the cage trap him? Master! Master! Seeing Situ Qingyue's head flying in the air, all the Situ family warriors in the area were greatly frightened and no one dared to step forward. After turning around, Jian Wushuang walked into the cage. He chopped the pillars of the cage with his sword and appeared before Ji Wuiyue. Auntie, Jian Wushuang's voice trembled. Ji Wuiyue was just absent-mindedly sitting there. Until she heard Jian Wushuang calling her, after which her eyes shone lightly. You are, Wushuang? Ji Wuiyue asked with a deep and husky voice. Yes, it's me, Jian Wushuang nodded vigorously and said, Auntie, I'm here to take you away. After saying that, Jian Wushuang directly held her in his arms and walked out. At the exit of the secret chamber, there were so many warriors from the Situ family blocking the door. Anyone who stands in my way will die. Jian Wushuang shouted in a cold voice and glanced around with killing intent. All the warriors in the Situ family were so frightened that they all moved back out of the way, making way for them. Jian Wushuang took Ji Wuiyue out from the Situ family, and then they sat on the griffin waiting outside and flew away. Half a day later, Jian Wushuang was back in the cave again along with Ji Wuiyue. Ning was still lying on the ground in the cave. His crazy yell had died down because of his hoarse throat. However, his contorted face and crazy eyes showed that he was suffering a lot. Jian Wushuang carefully let Ji Wuiyue recline on the cave's wall, and then he walked toward Ning. Give me the antidote. Jian Wushuang shouted coldly with a commanding tone. Ning forcefully raised his head, glancing at Jian Wushuang and Ji Wuiyue, then he sneered and said, Jian Wushuang, you want to save her now? Haha, absurd, ridiculous. The heart-biting poison had spread through her whole body. She can't survive much longer. I don't have any antidote. Even if I did and gave it to you, it will not work anymore. You have belittled the heart-biting poison too much. Haha. Ning laughed wantonly. Pia. Jian Wushuang slapped him on his face and said, Bastard. Wushuang. Ji Wuiyue's deep and husky voice sounded. Auntie. Jian Wushuang hurriedly walked toward Ji Wuiyue and squatted down in front of her. I clearly understand my body. It's true that I only have a few days to live and that no one can save me, Ji Wuiyue said with a smile. I have no regrets now that I have had a chance to see you and the old bastard again before I die. Wushuang, give me a knife. Jian Wushuang was in a trance. I want to kill him myself. Ji Wuiyue's voice trembled, looking at Ning with resentful and cruel eyes. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded. Then he took a dagger out from his interspatial ring and gave it to Ji Wuiyue. Ji Wuiyue strugglingly came to Ning and turned his body over so that he was facing up. Haha, Ji Wuiyue. How about the heart-biting poison? Ning looked at Ji Wuiyue with a grim smile. Ji Wuiyue didn't answer him. But she slowly stabbed the dagger into his thigh rather than the vital organs. Ha! Come on, kill me, torture me. What was the torture I suffered in comparison with what you suffered these years? Ji Wuiyue, you are so miserable. You were an extraordinary beauty who was second only to your sister, Ji Wuming, in Ji clan. So many experts once succumbed to your charm. But now look at you, a ghostly image. Miserable, such a miserable person. Ning growled crazily. Ji Wuiyue didn't say anything, just continuing to stab the dagger into his body again and again. One by one, she had stabbed him for more than 50 times in succession. At this moment, Ying's voice was faint and nearly breathless. Then Ji Wuiyue raised the dagger in her hand and brutally stabbed it into his heart at his last breath. Ning died at once. After killing Ning with her own hands, Ji Wuiyue's whole body was trembling, but there was also delight showing in her eyes. Jian Wushuang coldly watched what she did. But he felt ashamed and guilty when facing his auntie Ji Wuiyue. Wushuang. Ji Wuiyue suddenly turned. Auntie. Jian Wushuang raised his head. Shua. Her blood spilled on Jian Wushuang's face and he was completely stunned. Seeing Ji Wuiyue stabbing the dagger into her own heart. Although Ji Wuiyue spat blood out, she wore a smile on her face. After suffering so many years, it's time to get rid of it. Wushuang. Don't forget the blood debt of the Ji clan. But now you are not strong enough and you'd better not fight against Blood Feather Tower face to face. What's more, I saw your father. Though it was 3 years ago, he is alive. Once she finished saying that, Ji Weiyue gave Jian Wushuang one last look and then she slowly fell down. Stunned, Jian Wushuang stood there rooted on the ground. He recovered himself a long time later and looked at his dead auntie. Ah! A roar with unprecedented killing intent flew to the 9th heaven at this moment. Rummel. Even the void thundered as if it was echoing his angry roar. After a good while, everything finally quieted down. The thunder stopped, and the heavy rain which lasted a whole day and night stopped as well. On an unknown hill, Jian Wushuang knelt in front of a nameless gravestone. Holding his hands closely and looking at the gravestone, he kowtowed 3 times heavily. Auntie, rest in peace. I swear I will collect the blood debt for our Ji clan. Jian Wushuang said in a calm tone, but he was much more persistent and determined than ever before. Blood Feather Tower, everything was caused by Blood Feather Tower. Jian Wushuang's face was ice cold. But Auntie is right. I am not strong enough, I'm far from being strong enough. Though I can bring some loss to Blood Feather Tower, I cannot turn it upside down. There is still a long way to go before I can uproot them. I have to try my best to improve my strength. Jian Wushuang had a strong desire for strength. Staying in Sword Tomb for 2 years, he had improved a lot and could even kill normal purple-masked assassins. However, his strength was far from what was needed to uproot Blood Feather Tower. It's better to go back to Dragon Palace first. Jian Wushuang set off right away. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.